that's when it hit me. Of course they would, because they're bitter old hags who have literally nothing better to do with their miserable lives than to come in every Friday to listen to town gossip, and if he decides to sprinkle in a dash of racism, all the fucking better. Hey there, stranger. My name is Me, and usually I make pretty lighthearted videos discussing movies, but today I just want to rant because, for whatever fucking reason, these past 2 months or so, I've been plagued by memories of this belligerent asshole, which really sucks because I've been able to go years without sparing this man a single thought, but now he won't leave me the fuck alone. So the hope is by finally just speaking out about this experience as a whole and getting off my chest means that I can get peace of mind back and resume life like normal, because I'd really appreciate being able to sleep again. Just as a disclaimer, once I actually get started into the story, I won't be looking at the camera at all, because after a multiple failed attempt at trying to record this video, I've learned that something about the camera just throws me off. I don't know if it's because I'm intimidated or I get nervous because I'm then thinking more about how the video is going to turn out than actually telling the story. But whatever the case, I'm either going to be looking down at my outline or just off to the side or just really wherever, because I kept losing my train of thought and I really do want to be able to vent and not stress about how everything's going to turn out. But other than that, let's go ahead and get started. So this all started my senior year of high school when we moved into a small retirement town for a joint business venture between my mom and my aunt. They were looking to purchase a nail salon, and after a couple months of searching, they were able to find a joint nail and hair salon. And once they purchased it, they entered into an agreement with the previous owner, which for our story's sake we'll be calling Parasite, which stated that he wouldn't be able to open up a new shop or work for any competitor within a 10-mile radius for the next 5 or so years. And by the same token, we would not be able to break his booth rental agreement for that same amount of time. And in the beginning, the relationship between Parasite and my family was actually really great because he was a very charming and charismatic person who seemed to actually like helping us get acquainted with the business and the people, and he just overall gave us a lot of general advice. So even looking back in hindsight, I really can't pinpoint the exact moment where things went south because there was never a distinct moment or event or anything we said or did that could have possibly initiated this entire fiasco. But I think part of it probably had to do with the fact that we bruised his ego because we were not as enamored with him as everyone else was from the get-go. For all his charm, it came off as, well, I wouldn't really go as far as say sleazy, but definitely inauthentic and almost desperate. To me in particular, it was very reminiscent of a couple people who really fucked me over in the past, but even back then I knew it wasn't exactly fair to project those previous encounters onto him and treat him based on those. So like the rest of my family, I made a distinct effort to make sure I was always polite and approachable. We were never mean or rude by any stretch of imagination, but neither were we overly enthused or fawning over every word that came out of his mouth. We were just civil. And that clearly hurt his pride because we learned very early on that this man loved to talk highly about himself. He somehow managed to turn every single conversation with a client into one about himself, and it was so formulaic that after being there for only a week, I swear to you I could write you a script almost verbatim, exactly what he would say, in what order, and down to the very jokes he'd tell. For the first 5 to 10 minutes, he pretended to care about his clients, getting to know them a bit, gassing them up before hitting them with a, "Did you know I used to own this place?" Then launching into the stories about his illustrious career as a stylist to the stars for over 30 years. He was also a very prominent ballroom dancer before he decided to settle into this quaint little town with his very modest 100-acre farm with his many thoroughbred horses and Yorkies. Then end the entire thing with stories about his crazy clients, which we will go over in a sec because, oh, they were so crazy. It might have been interesting, depending on the person, for the first couple times, but having to hear it on loop for a minimum of 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, it quickly becomes very torturous. And to truly understand the extent of how mind-numbingly tedious it was to listen to this man speak, I need to give you a quick rundown of the shop layout. So when the plaza was first built, our salon was actually 2 separate shops that was eventually bought together and joined with a door near the entrance. The left side of the salon had a private hair booth, a facial room, a massage room, as well as a restroom, but we mostly only used this place for storage because of all the shelves lining the walls. The right side of the salon is actually the main area of our business, and when you first walk in, there's a reception desk, followed by a partition wall, and on the right side there's 4 manicure tables, 5 hair booths, on the back wall there's 2 hair dryers, then the restroom on the left, a break room with our laundry, 2 wash stations, and 3 pedicure chairs. In the center there's additional 2 hair booths positioned back to back. Parasite had one of those center booths, and seeing as he's very loud in the center and our shop is relatively small, that meant that no matter where you stood in their shop, you could always hear everything he said, aka you cannot ever escape the torture. So for us, it was very tedious and laborious to listen to this man speak, but all the clients seemed to love him and just hang on to every single word he said. So the fact that we were not doing the same thing definitely got to him, but more than anything, it really just boils down to the fact that he had a hard time coming to terms with the fact that he's no longer in charge. Like I said in the beginning, he gave us a lot of advice, most of which actually center around the hair side of the business because my family actually has a very long history of managing and owning nail salons, but we've never done anything with a hair salon. So we were very grateful that he was willing to help us out while we were getting the hang of things. But once we started feeling comfortable and branched off onto our own, he definitely was not a fan because apparently it didn't align with the vision of how he thought the shop should be ran, which sucks, and to an extent I can empathize with his situation because it's very clear that he's used to being the boss, and he's been in this specific area for over a decade, so it must be very difficult to get reaccustomed to having other people make the executive decisions. But at the end of the day, that's the risk you take when you sell your business, and you can no longer dictate the direction we take it in, even if you have emotional ties to the place. And it's not like we completely changed everything. Most of our changes are actually cosmetic in nature, like the name of the salon or the floor layout to make it more efficient and ergodynamic. But even if we woke up one day and decided we want to change literally everything and make it, I don't know, a tropical themed salon without consulting him, we have every right to. But instead, we always made sure we listened to his suggestions, took them into consideration, and implemented what we thought would work. Sometimes that meant one, all, or none of them. In either scenario, we always made sure that he knew that we were thankful for his assistance, but at the end of the day, not only is it temporary, because again, it's only supposed to be until we got the hang of things, but we're also under no obligation to follow through with his suggestions because they're just that. Suggestions. Especially since he wasn't a manager or even an employee. Instead, being a booth renter meant in essence that the relationship was more along the lines of tenant and landlord. And unless our decisions directly intervene with the way he's able to conduct his business, which it never did, then he has no leg to stand on. For example, when we decided to change the layout from having 3 pedicure chairs and 2 wash basins in a row to having 6 pedicure chairs in a row and the wash basins moved by the break room to accommodate for the fact that we have at least 4 nail techs on hand at any time. It wasn't exactly the most ideal location, but we didn't exactly have a lot of space to work with, so we just made do with the best we could. So you'd think that the fact that he still has the amenity that he's paying for, just a slight variation in locations, and it was a minor but necessary change would mean that this was a non-issue. But of course, with Parasite, everything's an issue, and rather than just accepting the fact that change is inevitable, or just taking up any possible disagreements he has with us in private like an adult, he decided to lash out in the most petty, nonsensical, bullshit, passive-aggressive manner I've ever seen in my entire life. Because this grown-ass man decided the best course of action to express his displeasure with us is to literally bitch about it to his clients, so that way we indirectly hear about his complaints. He started off as normal, going through his regular script, but once he got to the part about him being the previous owner, he then physically turned his body and directly pointed us out as the new owners, and then go on to talk about how we're making all sorts of changes, which he personally wouldn't do. But you know how the youth are with their ever-changing minds and their incessant need to upset the status quo, and I'm sure eventually they'll figure things out on their own. Like, of all the condescending nonsense, just and this was not a one-time thing either. He instead decides to make it a habit to talk shop to all his clients. Including time when we were going through the process of looking for new hairstyles because we didn't just want to rely on him being our only one. And since things were starting to get a little rocky here, we debated on asking his opinion on the applicants. But since he's lived here for so long and possibly knows these people, we decided to ask him anyways, and it turns out he's actually worked with every single one of them. He said that the majority of them were unprofessional, never showed up on time, never paid rent on time, and just a plethora of other reasons why they were a bad choice, which we thanked him for his input and decided to contemplate between the pros and cons of each person because at the end of the day, we still need stylists. And in the meantime, Parasite decided to take it upon himself to gossip about every single one of those candidates for the next week, telling any and everyone who listened how, again, it's not his personal choice to be hiring anyone new, especially these people because he thinks they're all shitheads, before divulging into a plethora of unnecessary information like their financial situation, who they slept with, their family problems, just anything and everything under the sun about their character. I mean, it's one thing to discuss the qualities of a potential employee and how their perturbing life might affect their work ethic, but it's another thing entirely to go into excruciatingly intimate detail about their personal life, especially to clients of all people who are not on a need-to-know basis. Like, seriously, dude, what's your fucking issue? As if that's not bad enough, this man also loved to shit talk about his own clientele, and not just talking about your typical, oh, I had a crazy client one time who tried to scam me out of money or burn something down. No, he liked to talk about his current ones and how they're crazy, usually on the basis of their appearance or that they wanted a refund because that's just so crazy. This one instance in particular sticks out in my mind because it just clearly showed exactly the type of person he is. I mean, I was already starting to get a picture from my experience so far with him, but this was the final nail in the coffin. So one day, Parasite is working on one of his regular clients. We're just gonna call Karen for this story because I really don't care enough about her to come up with a witty name. But he's working on her when another client walks in. And seeing as Karen's color was developing and she was okay with it, he was able to take her on and give her a quick haircut in the meantime. He started his usual bullshitting. The only reason why I even paid attention at this point in time was because he seemed to really lay it on thick and was over the top even for him, just like throwing compliments out left and right and seemingly wanting to ask her number and be her friend. For the next half hour or so, all three of them seemed to have a really good time, just talking and laughing. And when he finished her, he brings her up to the front to check her out, give her his card, say goodbye, and all that fun jazz. And the second he turns around, and keep in mind, the client is still in the building right now, just gathering her things, getting ready to leave, but still in our building. He turns to Karen, starts, I guess, what he thought was whispering, but he starts going in and just fat-shaming the hell out of this client. Talking about how he can't believe someone has her size has the audacity to wear those type of shorts. Like, did she actually think she could pull it off? And saying some really awful things about this woman for no fucking reason. I was just so dumbfounded because I know as humans we all make snap judgments and have opinions on things, but that doesn't always mean it needs to be expressed. And also because I just didn't see what the issue was because she was just wearing shorts, nothing super scandalous, it wasn't like a thong or anything like lewd or, showing too much. It was just a pair of shorts on a hot summer day. Something that mostly every other one of his clients was wearing, even Karen herself in this instance, and they only had an issue with because she wasn't like a size 2. It's just so fucking ridiculous. And beyond that, I just think it's really disgusting to be such a fake ass bitch because yes, I understand that in this industry you are basically gassing over your client because that's just how things go, but you didn't have to take it to that extent because you were basically making plans on like going out with this girl, getting her number, especially because the client again hasn't even left the fucking premise. And Karen is no fucking better because rather than telling him to stop or, I don't know, just ignoring him, she actively joins in, starts cackling like a fucking hyena and be like, oh my god, yes, that's exactly what I was talking about. And I just couldn't take her serious because who the fuck does she think she is, thinking that she can pull that off? Which I'm like, again, pull what off? She's just wearing shorts because it's hot as fuck outside. Like, I don't understand why you guys are so fucking judgmental. And I'm not sure if Karen's just too fucking stupid to realize that if he's that comfortable talking shit about a client, again, who's still in the fucking shop, then why the hell do you think you're immune to that? Like, do you think that just because you're skinny, you're somehow superior to this woman and therefore he won't talk shit about you behind your back? Like, no, bitch. I mean, gossiping is normal to an extent, but keep that shit to your family and friends. Don't involve your clientele in the business going on, and most of all, do not fucking talk shit about the people who fucking pay your bills, dude. Like, honestly, what the fuck is your issue? I mean, it's really not that difficult to have a bit of decorum and conduct yourself accordingly because not only is this completely tasteless, but it's also unprofessional as hell, which is ironic as fuck coming from the man who loves to drone on and on and on about all his expertise and professionalism and how the youth these days are lacking such qualities, which, I'm sorry, bitch, I think we're operating on different definitions of the word professional because when have any of your actions so far shown any ounce of fucking professionalism? Oh my god, silly me. You must be talking about the time afterwards when my mom asked to either speak to you outside on the left side of the business where it's unoccupied, so that way any business you discuss is private between the two of you like it should be. The part where she asked you to please stop bringing up our business in your gossip, but you decide you have to storm back into the right side, where there's actual people there, cause a whole damn spectacle, yelling about how unprofessional we are and you've never been treated so disrespectfully, which is really damn funny to me because you seem to not have any qualms treating my mom with such disrespect. Seeing as how you decide to adopt an Asian accent every single fucking time you speak to her after meeting her for the first time. And when I say every single time, I literally mean every single time he spoke to my mom. Which is different to how he treated Granny, who was another nail tech that he's actually known for about a decade. But she has a very strong New York accent, and he does make fun of that sometimes, but only when she's using uncommon phrases or misspeaks, and because it's just so funny to him, he has to repeat to every single person he knows. But with my mom, he puts on that accent with every single interaction they have, regardless of what she said. And interestingly enough, never actually parrots anything she says, or even brings it up to anyone else. I mean, he's comfortable enough to do it in front of a client, but he actually won't repeat anything she said. Which is such a shame because I'm sure if you turned to the client and said, you won't believe what boss here said yesterday, it was the funniest shit ever. She said, and this is where you put on your little accent, your next client's here, Parasite. It would be a fucking riot, man. People would be laughing because it's just so fucking funny. Really funny. I also find it super interesting that he only ever speaks to my mom that way. The only one of us that doesn't speak English fluently because he has regular contact with two other people in my family. My uncle, who also has a very thick accent but speaks English fluently, would probably call you on your fucking bullshit. And then myself, who speaks English fluently and has no accent, so it probably seemed racist as fucking hell if I was speaking to you like this and then you decided to turn around and speak to me in an Asian accent. But surely I'm mistaken. You didn't specifically target the most vulnerable person in our group, nor were your actions towards her exceedingly disrespectful. I'm sure it's just my, youth impeding my ability to understand what true professionalism means. So please, explain to me how your actions were not mocking or racist in the slightest. In fact, it's actually a sign of utmost respect and a show of exemplary professionalism. Go ahead, enlighten me. I can't even tell you how many fucking times I wanted to bash my hands into this motherfucker's punchable ass face, but as much as I want to beat his face into oblivion, the optics of a then 17-year-old me wailing on some 6-year-old man, it's just not great. And besides, my mom had specifically asked every single one of us to bite our tongue, be the bigger person, and just keep the peace, which was not fun. And perhaps my vitriolic hatred of this man seems a little overdramatic given the circumstances, and if it was just this one instance, maybe I would be able to overlook it because, yes, so slightly racist, but it's not the end of the world. But of course, he didn't just stop there because when did they ever? No, instead he had to keep going and escalate it because, why not? He proceeded to insinuate that we were cheap assholes who got involved in shady business practices, which included but not limited to swindling him, stealing from him, getting involved in some type of illegal side hustle at some point or another. Oh, and best of all, that my people are always degenerate bastards who should go back to our country, seeing as that's the only place where deplorable behavior is acceptable. Which, yeah, we will cover that because he actually said that. Not to our faces, mind you, because that would be a blatantly racist thing to say. No, instead he tried to cling onto the veil of plausible deniability by only insinuating such notions and explaining it away with a pathetic excuse of a reason. He tried to keep the more outright racist shit behind closed doors. Keyword there being tried because obviously I know about it. So first, let's go ahead and tackle the cheap accusation because it was honestly the dumbest one. And obviously, it's not based on the prevalent stereotype that all Asians are cheapskates. Oh no, my friend, he had a really, 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 really strong case. And you see, it's because, well, we didn't want to pay a $10 monthly music subscription. That non-essential resource which you can access for free online. Yeah, that one. And, no, that's about it. Yeah. Which, wow, we're just off to a great start. Just as this alone to show you how nonsensical his argument was, but just so you understand how asinine and tedious it was to deal with this motherfucker, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the music debacle, which isn't really necessary, but this is a rant to talk about everything that happened, so I'm going to include it because this was the most. So when we first took over the shop, it was like in the middle of the month, and he still had his leftover subscription. So that's how we were playing music for the first 2 weeks or so. And when it ran out, we didn't really feel like repurchasing it because it's really unnecessary. So we tried a couple of different methods. First, we played those hour-long spa music playlists on YouTube, but it was just too slow and it made him really sleepy. So then we tried the radio, but it was too fast and it was all the same trashy pop songs. So my uncle found an old phone that wasn't really being used so I can download music, which began round number 1, in which case I downloaded over 500 best hits from 70s to modern day, covering genres that were really easy to listen to, excluding, the more polarizing ones like metal or country. And because, it's a random playlist, I decided to add maximum 10 foreign songs, which was mistake number 1, because about half of them were Spanish and French songs, and the other half were Asian songs, 1 or 2 Vietnamese and like 3 Korean or something like that. And despite the fact that, again, only maximum 5 Asian songs, Parasite felt it necessary to comment every single time that these songs came on. And again, 5 out of over 500 songs. When they came on, he always felt the need to comment, oh my god, I thought we were in America. Are we in China now? Because obviously, you can only be in Asia to enjoy Asian things. And obviously, anything Asian is automatically Chinese because, obviously. He also complained about how the music is too modern, the singers have no talent. And just so you understand the scope of things, I need you to understand that anytime I say he made a comment on something, he complained about something, or he just talked about anything in general, he did it with every single one of his clients, which means multiple times a day, every single fucking day, at minimum for a week, and the longest for actual months, because this man is nothing if not consistent. So yeah, that got really annoying really fucking quick. And after hearing a fucking week's worth of him talking about the same thing over and over and over and over and over, I finally decided, you know what, fuck this shit. I'm just gonna go ahead and change the playlist because I'm tired of hearing this man's voice. Which was mistake number 2, or maybe it's actually our original mistake number 1, because trying to appease this man out of a sense of feeling indebted to this man for his help, or just to get him to shut the fuck up, didn't really ever help, but you live and you learn. Anyways, since he's, again, the only motherfucking person coming out of this shit, I decided to go to him and ask, what type of music do you want to listen to? And he said, anything from the 50s, because that's the only real type of music. Which, hot take, if someone says that, so-and-so is the only type of real music, that probably means that they're a pompous, uncultured asshole, because usually you see other people, when they say, like, rock is the only type of real music, or 80s music is the only real music, they never actually mean that as the genre itself, only as it pertains to the United States, or to specific artists that they like, which is just dumb. But anyways, so round number 2, and with all these rounds, I always download at least 500, that was the goal, but I found the greatest hits of the 50s, download them all, and for the first couple days, everything seemed fine and dandy, which, thank God, because I'm really tired of hearing him bitching about the same shit over and over again. But, that piece only lasted a couple of days, because one day, this motherfucker decides to walk in with his speakers blaring his own damn music. And in case you didn't think that was rude or inconsiderate enough, there's also the fact that he's the only one who shows up about an hour or 2 after we open, so we were already with clients, and this man, again, just barges in fucking blaring his own damn music, which is really fucking annoying since this entire playlist was changed specifically for him, with me even taking out my foreign music, because, again, really fucking sick and tired of him playing about the same dumb shit. But, seeing as we're still trying to be fucking polite and, keep the fucking peace, I had to bite down my irritation, approach him with a smile after finishing my client, and saying, Parasite, is there anything wrong? Like, I thought this was the type of music you wanted. To which he says, oh, sweetie, which... I just love it when old men patronizingly call me sweetie. It's like my favorite thing in the world. But he says, oh, sweetie, there's nothing wrong with the music. It's just not my personal taste. It's almost like just because a song came from a specific era or genre doesn't mean it's automatically good. And that good music can come from any single point in time. And just because it's new doesn't mean it's inferior by any means. And just because you personally don't like it also doesn't mean it's not good. I mean, you'd think by now people would learn, seeing as how many artists have been unappreciated during their time. But, okay. So this time around, I asked him specifically what artist he wants, which again, should not have been so accommodating, but it is what it is. So fucking round 3, we're going by specific artists that he provided. And if you thought that was enough, you'd be dead wrong, because no, of course it wasn't. So now we're on to round number fucking 4. And see, Granny at this point in time decided to take pity on my poor soul and help me out. So we literally sat there choosing out individual songs by each artist, which he would apparently like. And after curating this entire fucking playlist of, again, over 500 songs, specifically for him, it still was enough for this motherfucker. Because he still fucking complained. I'm losing my mind. I feel like I'm losing my mind all over again. Yeah, so I was fed up because, again, I was already too fucking accommodating as it is. And I absolutely refused to do this again because at this point in time, it's been 4 rounds, which means almost 2,000 songs being downloaded. And if it wasn't for the fact that the tides had turned and now the coworkers were also getting annoyed, I know for a damn fact he would still continued. Up to this point, everyone else, again, didn't really fucking care what music was being played because, it was background music and you're at work. So they were all neutral about it all happening. But at this point in time, they're also getting annoyed because, again, what the fuck is your issue? This playlist was literally curated for you. So why don't you shut the fuck up? Don't get it twisted, he still complained because of fucking course he did. It was less frequent, instead of being multiple times a day, it was like once a week, which, improvement, I guess. And throughout it all, he kept shilling for that damn subscription, which I don't even understand why he had such a fucking hard on for this one in particular, because it wasn't anything special, it was just a streaming service. Only for music, by the way. And it wasn't like it was specifically targeted towards like 50s music, which again is the only real music he likes anyways. No, it was just like your run-of-the-mill streaming service. But he kept going on and on and on about he doesn't understand why we wouldn't pay for it because like it's only $10. It's like really affordable. It's not expensive at all. It's only $10. And you know, we wouldn't be having all these issues if we had just bought the subscription. You know, neglect to include the fact that the only reason why we had issues in the first place is because this motherfucking bitch won't stop complaining. He's literally the source of all our issues. But no, it's because, you know, we wouldn't buy this fucking music subscription. I think it's just so interesting. This is what he chose to focus on and completely ignore all the additional upfront expenses we had to take on because despite owning this salon for over a decade and having the proper funds to do so, he refused to update anything and let everything fall into basically ruin. Like the 3 pedicure chairs that we had originally, they were all different makes and models, with only the middle one having a working massage still. That worked like maybe half of the time. Also, none of them really had warm water except, again, the middle one. So we bought 6 new ones and they're about $2,000 a piece. Plus, you know, additional plumbing costs. And he only originally had 3 manicure desks, which again wasn't really gonna work since at all times we had at minimum 4 up to like 7, or maybe it was 8, or was it 9? A lot of people, so we definitely need a lot more desks. And he only had maybe like 50 bottles of nail polish, no gel, no dip, no nothing. And they're all fucking crusty as hell. I'm pretty sure he's never gotten new ones in all the years that he was working there. I wish I took pictures because I'm not really a person who takes pictures in general. And also at this point in time, seats weren't really a big thing. They were so overused. They'd have to use polish thinner for every single fucking coat of paint they put on someone's nails. Like, it was so sad. And he was fucking wondering why his nail business wasn't doing well. It's like, dude, you barely have any colors, and the ones that you do have are all fucking disgusting and crusty. You only have one option for a pedicure. You have no gel or dip, and your fucking chairs are broken. And worst of all, were those decrepit towels he had. Like, they were little fucking rags, which again, I wish I had taken pictures because it was fucking disgusting. Like, most of his towels were white, and they used hair and nail towels interchangeably, so a lot of them had like bleach stains and like really weird like brown reddish stains, which doesn't really look good when you're like trying to do a pedicure for a client and that's the type of fucking towel you have. And they were all like full of fucking holes, like they were little rags. Yeah, it was just not a cute look. And you know, these are all expenses that are like normal in a business when you're updating things, but also we didn't really think it would have to be that expensive or that early, but just to save things was like absolutely atrocious. But you know, those were the essentials, and contrary to his belief, we didn't just skip out on the rest because we actually were striving to provide our clients with the best possible service, which means giving them options. We, at minimum, probably introduced like 500 new colors, gels, dips, you know, some that glowed or mood changing or chrome. Just a lot of options, as well as more pedicure choices. But that also means extra cost because you have to pay for all the individual scrubs, the lotions, hot towels, hot rocks, the towel warmer, wax. There's a lot of things. And we also provided complimentary drinks such as freshly brewed coffee every day, different type of soda, and a complimentary glass of wine for the higher tier pedicures, and also snacks because we would occasionally run over to the grocery store and bring back like these mini muffins, which were like so delicious and everyone loved them, especially with the coffee. Or if they weren't available, then my mom would run to like the nearest bakery and would bring in some donuts in the morning. And then eventually one of our clients actually baked us a bundt cake, which was really good. And seeing as everyone liked it so much, she asked if I wanted the recipe for that, which I was like, yes. And after that, I like would on occasion bake cakes. And you know, these costs weren't exorbitant by any means, but it's not like we just had money to throw around because we're an actual working class family who don't have connection to celebrities, generational wealth to back us up, or, you know, best of all, a rich retired husband like Parasite does. Instead, you know, my mom invested all her life savings into the shop, and I personally never got a real paycheck. I mean, not that that's unexpected when you're working for family, but you know, everything we had went back into our business, and we were willing to take on extra costs when we thought it was necessary to make sure that our customers were given the best experience, and we always strove to do our best. And yet, Parasite, you know, the man who loves to brag about how wealthy he is and all his connections to celebrities and his many horses and Yorkies and his big ass farm and all the updates he's doing on it, the only thing he could give his customers for over a decade were 3 janky ass pedicure chairs, which worked like half of the time, lumpy ass nail polish that's probably a decade old, and rags with gajillion holes and questionable stains everywhere. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot. He actually did have something else to provide his clientele because at one point he ended up breeding his Yorkies in his backyard, I suppose, and brought them in to sell in the salon lobby and sometimes even the salon parking lot, which is it's not just the definition of shady, but but anyways, despite all of this, right? Somehow this entire event got twisted into my family being the cheap ass, which interesting. I mean, if we're gonna pretend that you're not using racial stereotypes against my family, you're gonna have to come up with something a little bit better than us not wanting to spend an exorbitant $17 monthly fee for fucking music. And no, I did not misspeak there because he said it was only $10 to make it seem extra cheap. But when I checked, it was actually $17 for only music. I mean, good for you that you're able to spend that like excessive amount. But again, unlike some people, we're not fucking made of money. I'm sorry. Now, as for the second accusation that, we're involved in some shady business practices, that was completely baseless in the beginning. Because in full transparency, we definitely did fuck up in the end there. My family were not perfect angels or flawless by any means. And unlike the many, many, many mistakes we're going to make in this entire shit show, because, we're either too naive or trusting, this time around, it's really because at that point in time, we're just fucking fed up, stupid, and petty as hell. And got almost instant karma, which I'm not even lying. It's kind of annoying that even Lady Luck seems to be smiling down upon this motherfucker, but in either situation, we really shouldn't have done what we did. I just want to say that at the very beginning to be transparent, but also because I want to emphasize the fact that this happened almost a year after he began making these specific claims. So while it's unfortunate that we eventually would give his claim a bit of legitimacy, it doesn't negate the fact that they did not start in reality of the situation, but rather on racial stereotypes, because, us being Vietnamese and owning a nail salon automatically means that we're involved in some shady shit. So, yeah, just want to say that. But now that we've established that, let's go ahead and delve a little bit deeper with his so-called reasons. Which takes us back to the layout change, because we had to have pipelines extended or moved somewhat so that way we can actually have the wash basins put in the proper place. I'm not really sure if I mentioned it to this point, but all the technical and legal aspects was actually handled by my uncle, while my mom and I were the ones actually working in the salon as nail techs. So I'm gonna be pretty hazy in those areas, but I'm pretty sure it had something to do with the fact that it was being installed around an open door. We had to have our plans approved before we could continue, and once we did, we closed shop for a couple days, potentially even up to a week. And for a couple days, business ran like normal until, Parasite had to ruin that because, of course, he did. He started saying shit like, I've never actually seen a plumber around here before. Are you sure they did up to code? I mean, I'm not doubting you guys. I want to check in. Okay, I mean, like, we were closed for a damn reason for almost a fucking week, so that these people could actually do their work undisturbed. And it's not like we can just go about our regular business while the tiles being ripped up, the chairs are being disassembled, and the water has to be turned off because they're working on the fucking pipelines. I'm pretty sure that's a health hazard, but even if it wasn't, that's not exactly the vibe we're going for or how professional we want it to look like. I mean, maybe that's his definition of professionalism, but definitely not ours. And again, if he truly had an issue and felt concerned, he could just come to us to talk about it, but of course, instead he just chose to fucking bring it up to his clients because, I don't know, I guess they're his new advisors or some shit. I had no bias for being so concerned because we had to be approved to make this change, and we did everything up to code. We had an inspection and we passed. We also have all of our license and permits, and also our sanitation records out on display if you want to really check that shit. But that was just child's play, because this time around, he actually had another reason to accuse us of such behavior because, we were being degenerates who were trying to swindle this poor old man out of his money. And where did that come from? Well, you see, when things were, going well and he wasn't being a fucking dickhead, he got special treatment because, again, we were thankful for him, helping us out. So it's one of those, you scratch my back, I scratch yours type of situation. But obviously, once he chose to, sour the relationship, we weren't exactly just going to continue doing all that shit for no fucking reason. And I'll have to admit that details are a little fuzzy on how everything began because, again, my uncle was the one who actually dealt with all, the technical and legal aspects. Once things really started to go downhill, with him making all these damn accusations, there was some type of disagreement on how rent was to be paid because if you remember from earlier, I had mentioned that he had done 2 clients at once, and he actually started to routinely do that even after we got new hairstylists. So obviously, if you want to you use both booths, you're gonna have to pay rent for both booths. So if rent was to say like $250, then he was only paying about $350 to maybe $400 because again, we were giving him special treatment as a thank you for helping us in the beginning. Now, for whatever fucking reason, my uncle decides to secure this entire arrangement with only a verbal agreement, despite the fact that both my mother and I have expressed our distinct distrust in this man. That decision was clearly mistake number fucking 4. Because once things started to get rocky, Parasite all of a sudden decides he wants to go back to our original deal and only go strictly by the contract, which is a phrase that I want you to keep in mind because that'll become important later. And it wouldn't have been an issue except for the fact that he wanted to pay that $250 for both booths. He didn't want to go back to the contract to pay the original price for each booth or even to only pay for one booth. No, now he wants to pay $250 for both booths. And when we obviously refused such a ridiculous request, he then changed tactics and decided to demand exclusive access to the private room in exchange for the exact same amount of rent. Which makes even less sense because why the fuck would we do that? It's a private room with a wash basin and a hairdryer, if I remember correctly, which means the only utility you have to share with anyone else would be the washer and dryer. And since it's on the left side that's mostly untouched, that means you have an entire wing all to yourself. So why the actual fuck would we only charge you the exact same amount as a regular booth? I mean, we're open to renegotiating the terms because we would gladly kick you into a fucking room and forget you exist for however long our contract lasts. But definitely not for that fucking price. But Parasite wasn't interested in renegotiating. No, that's when he pulled the ace up his sleeve because what do you know? Mistake number fucking 4 came back to bite us in the fucking ass. Because he then threatened to sue us for 6 months of overcharged rent if we do not comply with his demands. I mean, legally he's in the right, but it seems, I don't know, sleazy and kind of a shady business practice. But then again, what do I know? Obviously, only my people are capable of such deception. It's just so fucking frustrating because if my uncle wasn't so stubborn and actually listened to other people's advice and opinions sometimes, we wouldn't even be in this situation to begin with. But now we got fucking played. So if you want to call us incompetent idiots or stupid, naive fools, or whatever other choice words you have for us, cool, fine. But to claim that we're trying to swindle a poor old man, yeah, go fuck right off. But of course, that's the narrative that Parasite ran with, and to no one's surprise, told every single one of his fucking clients how he's not going to play our little games, and he's going to continue working without paying rent. So eventually, my uncle decides to try and evict him, which was mistake number 5. He could have followed proper protocols, but I'm pretty sure he didn't because the only thing I really remember from this time is him calling the non-emergency police number, and they obviously didn't show up because it's not their jurisdiction. And you know, someday I will get to the bottom of just how badly we mishandled this entire situation and the depths of Parasite's fuckery because I know for a damn fact that both sides tried to keep certain things away from me because of my age. But that someday is definitely not today because I do not have the mental capacity right now to try and rehash this with anyone. This is purely for me to just vent years of bottled up frustrations. So let's go ahead and get back to the story. Once my uncle hung up the phone, Parasite actually called the exact same number and spent the next 5 or so minutes just shooting the shit with the operator, talking about their lives and asking about, their kids and reminiscing on how fun it was when he was their hairdresser. And once he was finished being buddies with the operator, he turned to his client. And yes, this entire interaction occurred in front of clients because what do these men care that us women have told them repeatedly to stop bringing up shop business to clients? The Parasite went on to call us a couple of choice names and then talked about how obviously we didn't have a case, but even if we did, it wouldn't matter because he has connections to major players in the community. Because surprise, surprise, living there for almost over a decade, being part of multiple committees, and being an overall charismatic person, a gossip, and hairstylist to the wives of officials in the city means you have a bit of influence. The reason why I include that entire interaction is because I think it's important to note that while it's not the first time he's pointed out his integral role in the community, I mean, it might be in this video, but definitely not in person, it was the first time he's shown not only the capability, but willingness to use that influence as a form of intimidation against us. Either ways, he eventually ended up in that damn private room, which unfortunately only gave us a temporary reprieve from this motherfucker, because you'd think after getting literally everything he demanded, getting an entire wing just to himself, he'd finally leave us the fuck alone, and we can mutually hate each other from a fucking distance and just avoid as much unnecessary interaction as possible. But nope, of fucking course not, because this Parasite we're talking about. And this damn drama queen found any and every single fucking opportunity he could to storm back into our side and bitch about whatever the fuck crawled up his ass for that day. Or I guess more accurately for that hour, because he would do this multiple times a fucking day. And of course, always when we're with the fucking client, and it's over the dumbest shit possible. Like, maybe he came in and the coffee wasn't freshly brewed, and rather than just making a new batch for himself, since, you know, it's there for your consumption, nope, he had to come over and bitch to us about it. Or maybe his toilet on his side is out of toilet paper, and I don't know, rather than checking underneath the cabinet, or, you know, going to the actual storage room we have on that side, nope, he has to come and bitch about it to us. He seemed to think that once he was in that room, we could no longer hear him, so he dropped any pretense of civility and embraced his outright bigotry. I mean, to some extent, he was correct in assuming that we wouldn't be able to hear his dreadful voice, because thankfully, when we were actually on our side, we couldn't hear a peep, which was blissful. But like I said, we had all of our storage on the left side, and that included any polish, any scrubs, lotions, nail files, really anything and everything you needed to service your client was on that side, so we had to frequently access it. And the walls over there are exceedingly thin, like worryingly so, and you can clearly hear every single word this motherfucker says. Even if you were in the restroom, which is at the very end of the hall, opposite to his room, which is at the very front. You think he would have known about this, seeing as he's been the owner for over a decade? I mean, now that I think about it, maybe that's why the massage and facial side of the business never took off even before we took over, because who the fuck can relax when he's over there spouting off his bullshit? And that's why not even a day after being put in that room, I heard this man go off about how my family are degenerate assholes who are swindling him out of his money, and who knows what other shady shit we're doing in the background, which might be acceptable where we're from, but definitely not in the United States. If we continue with our deplorable behavior, we need to go back to our fucking country. Now, I don't really think I need to explain this, but just because your ancestors were the original colonizers and your family in particular is 2 to 3 generations removed from that immigrant status, doesn't mean you have any more right to reside here just because we're only 1 generation removed. Nor is it okay to tell us to go back to our country because we look foreign and you don't agree with something that we said or did. But then again, saying that you told us any of this is a fucking stretch, because you never even had the fucking balls to say that to our damn face. Now, I didn't really stick around to hear the rest because, crazy notion, it's really not fun to listen to someone bash your family, especially when no one gives you the opportunity to explain the situation or defend yourself. Especially if he's that comfortable saying all this shit, which, in case anyone forgot, is at work to a fucking client. What else would he feel comfortable saying now that he thinks he's safe behind closed doors? And I just want to remind you that this is something I stumbled upon, okay? I wasn't eavesdropping or listening in, because that would kind of defeat the entire purpose of shoving him into this room, so that way we can cleanse ourselves of this man's droning voice. And because anytime we went over to that side, it was for a damn reason, which is to gather supplies to service our clients who are waiting for us. And the supply run at maximum took 5 minutes if I was to use the restroom, but if not, 2 minutes. And that includes the amount of time it takes to walk up and down the hallway, which just goes to show how frequently he spoke about my family, which isn't exactly a surprise, seeing as he was comfortable enough to give us subtle shade and gossip about us while in our presence. So anytime I heard a parasite mention my family, I just try my best to block it out and continue on as normal. However, there is one exception. One time I decided to stick around deliberately, because of the direct correlation it had to the fuck up I previously alluded to at the beginning of this session. Remember how earlier I told you to keep the phrase strictly by the contract in mind because it'll become important later on? Well, this is one scenario where that becomes relevant, because you see, when we first purchased the salon, there was the issue of what to do with the bookcase full of hair products that Parasite was currently selling. This bookcase was on the left side of the shop and stretched from the window of the entrance to the door, which leads to the other side of the salon. It was prime real estate because it's one of the first things that you see as a client, whether you're inside or outside, because it's right next to the ceiling to floor windows, and it's large enough that it could probably fit around 100 to maybe even 130 items if you're really pushing it. So rather than selling out his current stock and replenishing it in smaller quantities so that way he can fit it around his booth and sell it that way, Parasite decided to strike a deal with us, in which case we would allow him to continue displaying his products in our bookcases. In exchange, we would get about a 30% or so cut of his profits. And seeing as this happened in the very beginning and both sides were trying to foster a good relationship, he decided he didn't really need us to rewrite the contract and only kept it as a verbal agreement. So, since he's very adamant on going strictly by the contract, which definitely did not have a clause in there about us allocating an entire wall for him to sell his damn products, we made him pack his shit up. We weren't outright stopping him from selling his products, because he could still do that in the space that he rented, just like any of the other hairstylists who were doing the exact same thing from the beginning. Despite the fact that he still has more room than any of the other stylists, seeing as again his rent is paying for a private room, Parasite was still hella fucking pissed, because without that special treatment, that means he can only display maybe 40 items if he's really pushing it, as opposed to, the 100 or so. He's also now limited mostly his own clientele because we would sometimes have people just walk in not really looking for any service but wanting to just buy some products. But now those are our products on display and not his. But hey, we're just going by the contract. And if you wanted to continue that special treatment and privileges you had, then maybe don't be a dick and start problems where there are none. For the next week or so, as he's going on his usual tirade about how we're unjustly treating him, we're in breach of contract, we're awful people, yada yada yada, we start purchasing extra quantities of products like nail files, nail polish, top and base coat, foot mask, and things of that nature to fill up about half of the bookcase. And since we're also a hair salon, we decided the second half should be of hair products. Now, I'm not really sure if it's the same for all of the states, but in ours, there were certain supply shops which only sold to licensed cosmetologists, which meant that we could purchase professional brands of shampoo and conditioner and sprays and whatnot to fill up the other half of our bookcase with hair products that normal clients couldn't purchase on their own. But before we finished filling up the shelves, one day my mom asked me if I think I can find a certain line of hair products that he sells, and I think you can kind of tell where this is going and why I call this certain incident a fuck up rather than a mistake like our previous ones, because we knew better. We knew that there would be consequences because Parasite is already causing up a shitstorm solely because we're not allowing him to use our bookcases, let alone purchasing the exact same products that he has to sell on said bookcases. We knew it was petty and shady as fuck because we made it a point to avoid all the products that our other stylists were selling, but we're going out of our way to find the particular ones that he was selling. We knew this was a dumb decision and something we definitely shouldn't have done, but what can I say? After a year and a half of dealing with this bullshit, we had a moment of weakness and just fully embraced the pettiness, knowing full well that this would eventually backfire on us because you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, especially when you play against the devil himself. Anyways, I was able to find the shop that he purchased from, and I'm pretty sure this is one of those that also only sold to a licensed cosmetologist because I remember putting in a license number. Now, I'm not really sure if I put in my own information or since I was ordering on my mom's behalf, I put in hers. But I will go through my email and see if I can find it, and if not, I will try to get access to my mom's, but no guarantees. But either ways, we had to create an account with our name, license number, email address, billing, credit card information, all that fun jazz, and we purchased a couple of different products to sample out the line. Unfortunately, I wasn't actually there when it was delivered, which is such a shame because apparently his reaction was hilarious when he opened the package and learned it was ours and not his. Oh, and if you thought it was odd that he's the one who opened the package and not us, we did too, because despite the fact that it's our order and the packing slip inside had our name on it, for some reason, the package itself was actually addressed to him, which was definitely weird, but we thought maybe it was just a systems error until we heard him talking about it the next day. As I was on one of my supply runs, he began talking about the situation, and I was just going to ignore him like usual. But then I heard him talk about how, unbeknownst to us, the name change wasn't a mistake at all, but in fact was actually on purpose. So sue me, my interest was piqued, and I ducked into the storage room to listen to the rest of what he said. He talked about how he was actually good friends with the owner of the supply shop and had done business with him for over 20 years, so they recognized Parasite's address but noticed that this time around it was under a different name and with a different amount than he usually ordered. So they thought it was suspicious and decided to change the name of the label so that way Parasite would know about it. Even to this day, I'm pretty skeptical of that story because it doesn't fully make sense. I mean, if they were truly that buddy-buddy, then why did they just call him or email him about this suspicious order? And it seems like a really risky decision because our payment did go through, and if Parasite decided to just keep the items and didn't tell us about it, they would have to still refund us for that amount. So, I don't know, it's just really weird. But despite my skepticism, I don't fully buy that it's just a systems error because, like I said, we had to create a new account with our license numbers, along with other usual information like our name, credit card information, billing info, and we were charged, sent a bill, and confirmation emails, and the package slip also had our name on it. The only thing that was different was the package with his name on it. And it's a little odd to me that that's the only thing that was changed and nothing else got mixed up, like, again, credit card information or billing address. It's all a little weird. And to be honest, it definitely made us a little bit uncomfortable because while we had expected something in retaliation, we didn't expect anything to this extent, nor were we thinking that he had people who were comfortable to interfere with our order and therefore having access to our personal information. Now, maybe this all sounds a little conspiratorial for your liking, but maybe once you hear about the towel situation, which I'll talk about in a second, you'll see why I don't dismiss this outright, even though I'm skeptical of his story. But in either situation, he was then to be made the ambassador of the region, which means he would make a commission off of our future orders, which he might have if he actually was able to keep his mouth shut for like 2 seconds. I mean, I thought the whole villain monologuing about their evil plans only existed in movies, but he definitely proved me wrong in that aspect. On a side note, I did think it was pretty funny that they were apparently close enough to pull this shit off for him, but not close enough to make him ambassador, even though he's had 20 years of business with them. They only did it because he called them and bitched nonstop. So in essence, they did it to get him to shut the fuck up. Not that that's super surprising because bitching was his favorite pastime, but what did surprise me throughout this entire situation was how he was able to keep loyal clients at all, because he was always the one that's bringing them into needless drama and just being an overall very toxic person. For the life of me, I just couldn't understand why anyone would willingly subject themselves to the bullshit of this belligerent asshole. What if they actually believed half of the crap he said? There's one situation that always makes me laugh out of just sheer bewilderment because of how dumb his comeback was. And I, again, just don't understand how his client actually fell for this shit. But one day I was getting ready to do a manicure for a client and I had to go to the other side to get the nail polish, which is on a stand that's slightly off center and to the left of Parasite's door. That's important to note because if Parasite leaves his door open and I'm in that position when he's working on a client, that means I'm directly out of his view. However, if the client was to turn slightly, they would be able to spot me a bit in the corner. And it just happens at the time that I was going to get my polish, Parasite had left his door open for extra ventilation while he's working on Red's color. And while I was passing the hallway which connected the two sides, I had heard voices talking, but I didn't hear any distinct words to catch on to what they were actually talking about. So I didn't really think anything of it when it came to the stand and the conversation lulled. But it became abundantly clear I just caught them red-handed talking shit about my family, and Red herself must have signaled my presence because after 15 to 30 seconds of pure silence, Parasite said in the most condescendingly smug voice I've ever heard. I remember this verbatim because of just how fucking ridiculous it is. But he said, and I quote, "Don't worry about her, she knows her family's bullying me." Okay, first of all, I didn't even know you guys were talking about us, but clearly you had a guilty enough conscience that you felt the need to address my presence and show just how unbothered you are by coming up with that lame excuse of a comeback. Secondly, I don't know if it's age that has addled your brain or if you've just never been bullied in your entire life, but telling an employee that you know you're being bullied would probably just mean you got bullied 10 times fucking worse. And honestly, if you're trying to be a fucking victim here, could you have come up with something that's remotely plausible? Like, oh, I don't know, I won't be silenced anymore, or I won't be afraid to speak my truth, or literally anything else. But then again, I had just recently graduated at the time, so maybe in the week or the month I got out of high school, I just completely forgot the dynamic between the bully and being the bullied looks like. Because obviously, people who band together talk behind someone's back and literally have to stop all conversation when in said person's presence are the true victims here. And the person being talked about are obviously the despicable piece of shit bullies. So I shouldn't be mocking him or his absurdity right now. Instead, I should be applauding him for his bravery because after months of tirelessly and selflessly talking behind our backs, he's finally found the courage and strength in his friend's presence to confront the then 18-year-old me and tell me that he knows we're bullying him. I just want to mention that again, he didn't even have the fucking balls to say it to my face because remember, I'm still picking up my polish and it actually happens to be on the bottom shelf. So imagine me just crouching there trying to fucking pick up my bottle of lotion with my back towards him and he's saying all this shit to me, acting all fucking smug and like, "Ooh, I got you." Oh god, it's just so embarrassing. This entire situation is just ingrained in my brain because of the awkward position I was in, both literally and figuratively, but also because he actually thought he did something there. When I turned around, I just couldn't control my emotions and I was just slack jaw, open eyed, just like, did he just say that? And also, did he actually think he did something? But by his face, you would have thought I was just falling to the floor in mortification because seriously, he was so fucking smug and like, hell yeah, I just gave you the sickest burn. But clearly Red bought it hook, line, and sinker, which really made me take a mental step back and look at the type of clientele he has and why he seems to attract certain types of people, or more accurately, why he seems to repel a certain age group, in this case, anyone under the age of like 40. I had noticed earlier that he only had maybe one or two regulars who were in their 20s and 30s compared to the other hairstylists who had those as their main clientele base, but I brushed that off to mainly just being due to either their age or their talent. Like I said earlier, we were in a retirement town, so it's mostly an elderly population, so I just thought that anyone who's younger preferred hairstylists who were closer to their age. I had also heard from a lot of clients that he was really good, but I couldn't exactly judge his skill for myself because he specialized in Karen haircuts, and I had always thought those were ugly as fuck, so I couldn't really tell if looking at one and being like, oh, that's even uglier than usual means he has a lot of skills, or if the reverse is true, and if I see one that's not as bad, means that he has the skill to make it look good, or if me thinking it doesn't look as caring, it means that's a lack of skill. I don't know. I had my hair cut by him once in the beginning. I just didn't really see what the hype was about because it fucking sucked ass. I mean, I didn't say anything for the longest time because it was in the beginning and we were trying to be cordial, but also I was just in very deep denial because I really, really, really wanted to like the full bang cut for myself. And I tried to chalk it up to the fact that he just didn't have enough time because he squeezed me in like 10 minutes before he left. But eventually I just had to admit that it was not good because, well, I can't really show you now because I don't want to take this off, but let's say if my bangs started here on the right, the left would actually start here. Like, there's an inch gap between where my bangs start. It was just crooked as fuck. It was just horrible. And the only people who ever complimented me on that haircut was Parasite himself, who didn't seem ashamed at all, but was actually really proud and showing it off to other people, and his clients who seemed to love it, and some even complimenting me on it unprovoked. So I really started to question if they just had shit taste or if my family was too biased at this point to see the truth, until Santa joined our hairstylist crew. Santa was a jolly old man. Anyways, Santa was a jolly old man in his 70s who came out of retirement because he was bored and wanted to meet new people, seeing as he was also new in town. And once we had him to compare to Parasite, the two of them together basically just felt like a cheap knockoff versus the real deal. He was very talkative and outgoing like Parasite, but he wasn't a diva who needed attention all the time. He was actually charming rather than sleazy, so it's really no surprise that he became a big hit and built up his clientele pretty easily over the next few months. His clients varied from as young as 18 all the way up to their 70s, myself included, and I could tell that he had actual talent. And for a while I thought I was being biased, but I actually had outside confirmation because I had people stopping me out on the streets, asking me where I got my haircut done, and complimenting on my hair. And that's a real feat because the only times I ever really get stopped is when people want to ask me, those dumb questions of, what are you? Where are you from? Where are you really from? All that fun jazz. And the fact that Santa was older than Parasite, but was able to garner a clientele which varied from as young as 18 to their 70s, meant that that whole excuse of younger people just sticking to hairstylists their age went out the window. Also, the fact that he had a clientele at all despite his premium price, as Parasite put it, was a testament to his skills. Because Parasite being Parasite, he couldn't resist gossiping about Santa once he came to town, and after seeing his first haircut, he had to reluctantly admit that Santa had a lot of talent. However, he said that he'd never make it in his town because of the high price he was charging. And Santa did charge a little bit higher than usual because all the hairstylists were able to set their prices. And there were one or two clients who did complain about the higher prices, but Santa was a very charming person. He was always able to smooth over ruffled feathers. He'd always gently but firmly reiterate that he is not willing to charge anything less for his skills, but was always very glad to help them find someone else. He said it in a way which didn't offend them and would actually befriend him afterwards even if they never got a haircut with him. He was just overall very light, and having Santa there as a foil really made me question how Parasite managed to build and maintain such a loyal client base. Because he's charming on the surface, but once he starts to speak, he just spews hatred at every fucking chance, and his talent and skill is debatable if they ever really even cared about that, and his prices were average. So what makes clients so loyal that they would come so frequently, some coming once a week and others multiple times a week? And as I was thinking about his regulars, who they were, and why they're attracted to him, that's when it hit me. Of course they would, because they're bitter old hags who have literally nothing better to do with their miserable lives than to come in every Friday to listen to town gossip, and if he decides to sprinkle in a dash of racism, all the fucking better. Most of these women were widowed or divorced with grown-up children who rarely visited, which I'm not exactly surprised given their chosen and paid company. But before I make it any further, I just want to make it clear that most of my frustrations towards his client only applies to the regulars, and I don't really feel so antagonistic towards all his clients, despite them having the same characteristics as his regulars, because they're more or less just bystanders who only visit every so often, and I don't really expect them to stand up for us, and some of them actually try to help us in their own ways. For example, there was Elizabeth, who would come in every couple months, and she was a client of both Parasite and my mom, and she was actually the one that told us that Parasite was now going out of his way to sabotage our business and telling clients to take their nail business elsewhere because he wasn't just satisfied with tarnishing our reputation by insinuating not so subtly that we're horrible people, but now he's actively undermining us and trying to push a mutual client of ours to competitor salons. And keep in mind this is without them asking, because Elizabeth and many other clients who would later tell us the same thing weren't looking for a new technician because they were satisfied with my mom's work. But Parasite kept suggesting them multiple times throughout their session that they should go take their nail business across the street to the other salons. And he didn't just stop there either, because he then targeted everyone else's clients, including Granny's. His BFF who's worked with him for over a decade. Yeah, he also went after her clients. I mean, I get the point of suggesting other technicians because you don't want to give us business, because we were doing the exact same thing. But the difference is we only do so when the client actually asks for it, and we don't divulge into a long tirade about how Parasite is a racist piece of shit and you should never go to him before recommending them to Duncan or Tina or whoever else. We just recommend them a new hairstylist without having to divulge into a messy gossip session or include them into our personal grievances. Most importantly, we don't mess with a friend's livelihood just to get back at Parasite, because it's a pretty shitty thing to do. And I'll talk about Granny's reaction later because I'm starting to get a little too off topic, but basically I'm harsher and more antagonistic towards his regulars because unlike his usual clients who just passively sit through gossip like a bystander, most of his regulars decide to actively participate and make things a lot worse. And because this is starting to get way too long and I can only contain my anger so much, I'll only give you 2 examples Starting with Karen, because once we get to the second one, I'm gonna have to wrap things up relatively quick because that one still pisses me the fuck off. Now, I'm not really sure if I mentioned it before, or even if I really need to, but sometimes we have more than one pedicure at a time, which means more than one nail tech will be getting supplies on the other side. I mean, sometimes we'll get supplies for each other, but other times you don't really know what the other person needs from their card. So sometimes you'll have more than one tech on the other side getting supplies, which makes it extremely awkward when Parasite starts his bullshit about how we're assholes and should go back to our country and yada yada yada. So usually we just avoid eye contact with each other or give each other really uncomfortable smiles because it's just really awkward, okay? That's the situation I found myself in when Karen, instead of just not answering or, changing the subject, decides to agree and talk about how uncomfortable we make her when we decide to speak in Vietnamese because it's very rude and inconsiderate to clients. So let's discuss when my mother and I speak in Vietnamese and if it even fucking matters in the situation because, surprisingly, it really fucking doesn't. The only time my mother and I have full-on conversations in Vietnamese is when we both have no clients or are on free time together, or we have small 30-second interactions, which includes asking things like, hey, can you go get me this or that, out of an hour-long interaction with our clients, which, surprisingly, is never her because she's a regular at our site, which means she automatically hates us. Now, our actual clients never complained or gave us weird looks, and were either neutral or thought it was really cool and wanted to learn a couple of Vietnamese words with us. But I'm feeling pretty fucking petty right now, so I'm just gonna go ahead and give you a full-on walkthrough of what happens when we have a client and our interactions, so that way you can decide for yourself if in that short amount of time we're clearly fucking talking shit or not. So the client would come in, we would greet them, ask them how they are, how we could be of service today. Then they would choose a pedicure, in which case we would tell them to step onto the other side and pick out the color. And the reason why I'm choosing pedicure as a service of choice through this little demonstration is because that's the only one where we actually had a chance to even interact with each other, seeing as we'd be sitting side by side, as opposed to when we're at our desk and she's right in front of me, and that's a very awkward situation to be trying to talk to someone with. But while the client is choosing out the color, we set up the pedicure chairs, and once that's finished, we lead them back, have them seated, show them the menu, and give them a couple minutes to make their choice. Then I'd ask my client if they would like anything to drink, and that's usually when Mom would turn to me and say, "Con hỏi khách nào uống gì không?" To which I turn to her client and say, "Would you also like something to drink?" They give me their drink, I go get that, we get our supplies, we sit back down. Then we begin the pedicure, which includes washing their legs and feet, doing a bit of nail care, putting on the scrub, washing that off, then massaging in a bit of cream. And usually this is when my mom gets up and I turn to her and say, "Mẹ lấy khăn nóng cho con được không?" She goes and gets 2 sets of hot towels, gives one to me, and I would say, "Cảm ơn mẹ." We put the hot towels on the client, let them sit for a couple minutes, take that off, then lotion them, clean up the nail beds, put on polish, and lead them to the dryer. Now, if you can't gather enough context clues to understand what we were saying in those 30-second interactions, and instead think that we took that time to shit talk you, I don't really know what to say because, I'm sorry, I don't know how to fix dumbass. Like I said, the only time we have full-on conversations in Vietnamese is when we both have no clients, which means we're on our free time, and we then talk about our days or grocery list or whatever we have to do on the weekend because we have very long work days. When we first got the shop, I was finishing up my senior year of high school, so I would only come in about 2 to 3 hours during the weekday, but then on Saturday, I came in there for the full 8 to 10 hours. Then once I started college, I had 2 days of classes, and I had about 4 to 5 hours to come in on those days. Then for the rest of the 4 days, I would come into, again, the 8 to 10 hour days we had. And once it was summer, that means I was there for 6 days, 8 to 10 hours days, which is a very long time to be working. So that means we didn't actually have a lot of time to ourselves because once we actually got home, we only had maybe 1 to 2 hours to cook and eat dinner before getting ready for bed to start the whole day over again. So we took advantage of the free time that we had to just catch up, ask how the other person is doing, and most importantly, just plan what we're gonna have for dinner. And again, the grocery list for the weekend, because living in an area where there's really no minorities means that there are not a lot of ethnic grocery stores. So if you wanted to go to the Asian market to get groceries, which we can't really find in your average American grocery store, that meant we had to make the 8-hour round trip to the nearest big town every month or so. And seeing as, again, we only had 1 day off, we don't really have a lot of time to be planning out everything we need. So yeah, we're gonna discuss about it in our free time. So I wanna know why this fucking Karen thought it was really inconsiderate of us to be speaking our own language when we're talking about things that I don't even know the English equivalency of. Because again, we're talking mostly about groceries here. I don't know what ramung or raram or mamruk is in English because they don't sell that at English grocery stores. So why the fuck do I need to Google these things just so that I can start speaking English to pacify any Karens who might be around in the area and overhear our conversation? Because again, I just want to reiterate that we're never having these conversations when we're actually working on clients and talking over the heads or anything. It's only happening when we have free time between ourselves. So I don't really understand what the issue here is. Like, is it because you can't understand what we're saying, so therefore you think we're gossiping, and that's why you think it's inconsiderate? Or do you think it's because we're at work, and therefore talking in another language at all is unprofessional? And honestly, it doesn't even matter which of these reasons she subscribes to, because it's all fucking hypocritical bullshit, especially coming from Karen of all people, because she never had a fucking issue with anyone else discussing their personal lives in the shop. When Granny and Tina were talking about their grandchildren, she was all for it. When Duncan and Crystal were talking about their weekend plans to hit up the bar, she had nothing to say. In fact, I've even seen Karen sometimes butting into other people's conversations across the room. She's sitting in her pedicure chair, and Granny and Tina are over here talking amongst themselves again about their grandchildren or about whatever show they're watching. She overhears them and decides, hey, I want a part of that conversation, and literally shouts across the room. Okay, well, maybe not shout, because again, our shop is on the smaller side, but still, they're on the opposite side of the room, and you weren't invited to this conversation, but you just let yourself in and started talking to them across the shop. So clearly, you don't actually have an issue with coworkers discussing their personal lives or talking about topics which don't relate to work. You only have an issue with it when it's the Asian people doing it because we're speaking a language which you don't understand. And I guess that's because you automatically assume someone talking in another language means they have to be talking shit, which is such a closed-minded way to think, especially seeing as we haven't given off any universal body language clues which would indicate that we are gossiping. You know, like leaning closer to the person you're talking to, whispering in hushed tones, glancing back and forth between the person you're talking about and the person you're talking to, or looking them up and down. Behavior you should be intimately familiar with, seeing as you're the fucking regular to the town gossip who engages in all of these activities all the fucking time. If you remember from earlier, Karen is the same bitch who gossiped with Parasite about his fat client while she was still in our shop. So it's a little fucking hypocritical for you to have an issue with us gossiping about you while you're in the same room with us, seeing as that's the exact same shit you did to some other girl. It's also extremely self-important to think that just because you're in the same room as us, we have to be fucking talking about you, because I just want to point out that Karen was never a client of ours. So why in the actual fuck would we be talking about her when we have no experience with her? We're just having a normal conversation about our days, and the only reason why I can think that maybe you think we were gossiping is that Vietnamese, I've heard from other people, sounds very harsh. But just because our language sounds not as, I don't know, lyrical as other ones doesn't mean we're shit talking or that we're angry. We're not being excessively loud, nor are we being suspiciously quiet either. And again, I still don't understand why she thought we were shit talking about her in specific, because we don't know you like that. We haven't even spared you a single glance, and yet for some reason you think you're that important that we're going to be discussing you just because we're in the same room. Like, I just don't get it. All of this just boils down to her feeling uncomfortable because she can't understand us. Like, seriously, what she's actually saying is that she overheard someone else's conversation, didn't understand it, and then got mad at them for having that conversation in the first place. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, I don't get how someone could feel so entitled to someone else's conversation. Just because you're a client at my workplace doesn't mean you're entitled to every single conversation I have. And unless you're trying to argue that workers are not allowed to have any conversation that's outside of their work, which we already discussed isn't the case, then the actual issue is that you think speaking anything other than English in and of itself is rude, inconsiderate, and unprofessional. I don't really think I need to explain that, but thinking that English is the only professional language and everything else is unprofessional is kind of racist. Especially because, again, it's not like she's sitting here and we're ignoring her and talking around her, because that would be rude. I understand that some nail techs out there do that, but just because there's some nail techs of all races, I want to add, except Vietnamese are the ones who are stereotyped as behaving in this way, doesn't mean anytime you encounter a nail tech who happens to be Vietnamese and they're talking another language means they're shit talking you. You have to take in the context clues, and if you ignore that and just go off of, well, they're Vietnamese and they're talking shit because all Vietnamese people who are nail techs talk shit, that makes you prejudiced and racist. I'm never going to say that anyone who switches into another language is never gossiping, because I know people who do that. But just because there's some out there who do, you can't then go ahead and brush everyone who shares the same ethnicity or the same job with the same brushstroke. And heck, even the person who does isn't gossiping 100% of the time. They could also be just catching up with their family, since most nail salons are family-owned businesses, which is why context really matters. Also, I just want to point out the fucking double standard here, because when Parasite actually gossip about other people, sometimes when they're still in the same room, it's all fine and dandy because it's hot, fun, fresh new tea. But when they just think us Asian people are doing the same, that's when it's an issue. That's when it's inconsiderate, rude, unprofessional, disgusting, whatever you want to fucking call it. Because they didn't have an issue when Parasite was doing it. I mean, that's one of the reasons why he was so fucking popular, is because he engages in such activities. When us Asians are just thought to have done the exact same thing, That's when it's an issue. That's when it's not cool. That's when it's not okay. It's crazy to me that we can spend 90% of our day speaking in English. It's not like we're always free to sit down and chit chat with each other or have clients who come in together, so that way we have those small 30-second interactions where we're asking each other to bring nail supplies. But that 10% where we're speaking in Vietnamese is enough to offend her American sensibilities to the point where she would actually agree with Parasite's assertion that we should go back to our country. As frustrating as it is, it's not the worst because at the end of the day, this is a pretty common occurrence, and I've dealt with a lot of people with the same ignorant mindset. Usually those who only speak one language, because this isn't really an issue I've experienced with bilingual people. But in the grand scheme of things, it's only mildly irritating because, of course, it gets worse. And that's because when you add racial tensions to the mix, it rarely just stays heated words behind closed doors, and it usually spills over to some form of action. Luckily for us, it wasn't of the violent means, but it still shut my family up, which in hindsight is kind of weird because we already knew what type of person Parasite was, and he already made a point to flex his influence on us multiple times, as well as seemingly already using it on it twice before. Maybe we were just determined to be stubbornly naive as fuck, or we didn't want to be conspiratorial, or I guess because technically you could argue his actions in those two incidences were in retaliation to something we did, but then again, he was the one who started everything. But either ways, we really didn't anticipate Mega Karen's attack, but it all started with towels, because of course it did. Like I said earlier, once we started going strictly by the contract as per his demand, certain privileges and special treatments were revoked. One of them being pre-washed and pre-folded towels, meaning that now he would have to wash his towels like everyone else. That royally pissed him off, and he started bitching about how people were taking his towels and how we're going against our contract, being unprofessional as always, and blah blah blah. He was so bothered, in fact, that he threatened to sue us again, despite the fact that nothing in the contract states that we would include laundry services. And I actually remember this very vividly because my uncle was so frustrated at the time, he actually showed me a copy of the contract. He's like, okay, have I just all of a sudden lost my ability to read English? Because where does it state in this one paragraph, which was 1 to 2 sentences long, that we would be his fucking maids, pick up after his sloppy ass, do laundry, fold the towels, and put them away in his private room for his convenience? The only thing that was stated in the contract regarding laundry was that he would have access to the towels, detergent, and laundry machines. So we didn't exactly appreciate him trying to claim that we had to do his laundry per the contract, nor did we appreciate him running around claiming that certain towels were his and he purchased them, therefore no one can touch them, because in case anyone forgot, one of the first things we had to replace were the towels because his were fucking rags. He didn't exclusively own any towels either by purchasing them himself or by the terms of the contract because, again, the only thing it stated was he has access to the towels, and access does not mean possession. There's still the salon property, which is on loan to him while he's renting from us, and is also a resource that's shared by all of the renters, not just him. It's not like we allocated specific towels to each renter, but even if we did, he wouldn't even be using the correct ones. Because you see, in our salon, we had different sets of color towels for our hairstylists and for our nail techs. For our stylists, we avoided the color white like the fucking plague because we already seen how Parasite's towels turned out, so instead we went for a lot of darker tones like blacks, browns, grays, navy blues, dark green. And for our nail techs, we had 3 different matching sets, one in a sea green and a light gray, which consisted of stripes, polka dots, and a plain towel, as well as ugly pinkish maroon and lime green plush towels. That color combo wasn't exactly our first choice, but the towel quality was A++, and it was the only colors they had left in stock because we had purchased it from a bargain store, which is an important detail for later. As you can see, the towels for our stylists and our nail techs are very different for easy identification. The only one where I can say maybe they had an issue with would be gray, but even then not really, because for the hairstylist it was very dark charcoal gray, whereas for the nail techs it was very light gray. And everyone abided by the system with no issue except for, you guessed it, Parasite, because he thinks he's a special little snowflake who doesn't have to follow rules. And he always went for the lime green towels, which is also important for later. But Parasite started liking these lime green towels so much that he started feeling entitled to them, again telling everyone that it's his towels and that no one else can touch them, which, okay. And after a month of him bitching, complaining, causing a fucking ruckus, my mom finally got sick and tired of his bullshit and decided to suggest a compromise in which he can choose whatever color towel, which would probably be the lime green one, to keep, and no one will touch it as long as he does his own laundry. He's literally saying he can choose any color towel he wants. It will be off limit to everyone else, and he can keep it, not just like keep it for the entirety of his booth rental, but he will literally keep it even after our agreement ends and do whatever the fuck he wants with it, as long as he does the bare minimum and just do his own damn laundry. But of course, we know him at this point, and you know for a fact that that was not enough for him because he still wanted us to be his fucking maid, so he still bitched and complained. And as much as we've been a pushover thus far, this is where we put our foot down and was like, absolutely fucking not. We're already giving you way too much, even coming with that fucking compromise in the first place, so you either accept it or you can go back to using the towels you're supposed to use. So seeing that we refuse to give in to his demands this time around, he decides if he can't take it for himself, then he'll do the next best thing and have Mega Karen take it for him. So let's talk about Mega Karen. To be as short and concise as possible, Mega Karen was a woman in her 60s who had a very eclectic and eccentric taste in fashion. She was always dressed head to toe in custom tailored outfits, which were usually bedazzled, and she was always seen in 6-inch platform heels, which, not gonna lie, kind of terrifying because of the potential liability that could present. She actually fell over once right in front of our shop, and that was a horrible, heart-stopping moment, but luckily she was okay. But anyways, Mega Karen became a client of both my mom and Parasite. I want to say about 6 months in. With Parasite, she would get her hair bleached platinum blonde with pink and blue streaks. And with my mom, she would get a full-length set of nails, usually in chrome. And for all her oddities, she seemed like a very nice woman and got along with mostly everyone, except for Duncan, who was another hairstylist. And I honestly don't really know why the two of them hated each other so much, but they would actually get into like literal screaming matches, calling each other all sorts of names, and got to the point where Duncan would just have to like leave the shop when she came in. On a side note, Parasite wasn't the only one giving us issues at the salon. He's just the only one that's consistently doing so and had to be fucking racist, which is why he's the main character in the story. I just want to add that in there because I'm not really sure if it's just the business or if it was just people in that area who were fucking dramatic as hell. Because we had a lot of unnecessary drama in the salon. Like for example, there was that one time where an entire crew of hairstylists and nail techs from another salon, coincidentally the same one that my mom worked in before we bought ours, quit en masse and migrated to our salon, and we had a sneaky suspicion they weren't going to be there long, but they didn't really say anything, and after only working with us for a month or two, they all quit at the same time to open up a shop right across the street. So yeah, a lot of drama. Anyways, back on topic, Mega Karen came right around the time when things were starting to get tense between Parasite and my family, and it became pretty clear early on that she favored Parasite over us, but that's not really a surprise, seeing as again, he came off as a very charming person, whereas my mom is very reserved. But she seemed to still like my mom well enough, and they were able to have regular conversation. I mean, my mom, again, isn't really fluent in English, so she's not going to be sitting there talking in-depth philosophy with you or politics or giving you the hot gossip because that's really not in her nature, but she's able to hold a well enough conversation. And so our relationship was pretty easygoing. She got along great with all of us, except for Duncan, of course, and sometimes would even bring in treats for the staff, usually like a McDonald's frappuccino or something, and that was a really nice thing to do. And everything was so great that we really had no reason to believe that anything untoward was going to happen, which is why we were completely blindsided when one day Mega Karen comes storming in, screaming about how her special towels were stolen from Parasite, and she knows for a fact that my mom was the one who stole them. She said she had bought him a little care package with shampoo and combs, but more importantly, with white towels, which put a pin in that one because we'll visit that very shortly. But she has done this as a gift, which I don't really understand because this is supposed to be for her use specifically, so how is that a gift to him? But anyways, these white towels were supposed to be very special and only used on her and no one else. And apparently they have been using it since she first got here, but now they had gone missing. So she literally barged into our employee room, rummaged through our shit, and then grabbed the lime green towels and said that these were the ones that she bought. Which, funny that, didn't you just say 2 seconds ago it was white towels? So why the fuck are you grabbing lime green ones? I'm pretty sure I actually still have the lime green towels, so I'll insert a picture right next to white towels so you understand how it's basically impossible to mix these two colors up. And it's all just a little coincidental that the lime green towels were the exact same ones that Parasite had been using unauthorized and trying to claim that were his, and now she's doing the exact same fucking shit. And not only that, but she created this entire fake ass story to go along with it. And I know it's fake for a fact because let's go over a couple things. First of all, we've never seen you guys exchange any sorts of gifts, and seeing as you said you bought him an entire fucking box of gifts, you know, towels and shampoos and combs and everything, that's something that you can't just fucking sneak into your purse. So it's not like you can say that you gave it to him in private. There's no way in fucking hell we would have missing such a big ass box being lugged into our salon because my mom's desk is at the very front of the salon and I'm usually at the receptionist desk. And even when we're in the back getting our clients pedicure, we always look to the front when someone walks in to make sure that they were greeted and taken care of, seeing as we're the owners and we're responsible for that. And there is a door on the other side, but that always remains locked. So your only entry point is through our side. And seeing as Mega Karen has a very loud personality, we always know when it's her that comes in. So tell me again how you managed to sneak this entire fucking box of gifts you supposedly gave him through our salon. So the only way this exchange occurred, if it did at all, is off property where no one can validate its existence. And more telling than anything is that if he's using these towels just for you, right, that means at some point in time he has to wash them. And like I said earlier, this man never did his fucking laundry, not a single load of fucking laundry when we were there. So you're trying to tell me that this man thought you were so fucking special that he didn't want to contaminate his towels by washing it with the rest of the towels at our salon, so he had to take them home and wash them by himself? And keep in mind, that would all be done in secret because no one, not a single fucking person in our salon, has ever seen these white towels they're speaking of. And if that's the case, these towels actually existed, why the actual fuck did you feel the need to hide them from us? And not only that, but to sneak them in and out every single fucking week because she came weekly. And more importantly, how did he sneak these towels in and out? Because he only brought a small briefcase with him, and that's not enough to fit like one towel, let alone multiple towels. Not only is it highly impractical to ignore the actual laundry machine on site to bring your towels home to wash for only one client, it's also impossible for him to lug it in and out of our salon without us noticing any of these towels. I mean, if this was to actually take place, I would have to congratulate Mega Karen because she actually got this motherfucker to wash his own damn laundry for once, so there's that. But I just think it's so fucking interesting that she said they were stolen and she doesn't really know where it is. But she immediately knew where to go, what drawer to pick through, and specifically chose the towels that, again, he was aiming for this entire time. Not only that, but I think it's very fucking interesting that Mega Karen decided to rummage through our employee room because you see, before you even fucking enter the employee room, right next to it is a wash station, and then right next to that is an entire fucking bookcase similar to the one in the very front, which has all the hair products, but this one holds all the towels that the hairstylists use because it's right behind the booths and a very convenient place. So before you even fucking walk into the employee room, you can see all of these towels stacked. And I think it's so fucking interesting that you didn't even try to rummage through that. Instead, you went directly for the employee room and you went directly for the fucking drawer where we kept our towels. Especially because that's only a temporary holding place for our towels. Because once a load of laundry is done and you have a minute to spare, you would just fold the towels, put them in there, go on about your business, and once someone has free time, you just take the towels and put it in their proper place. For the hair towels, that's again right outside on the bookshelf, and for the nail towels, that's on the other side along with the rest of our nail supplies. And that distinction is important to note because Parasite, despite having access to all of our towels when we're there, since he wants to steal our towels all the time, he always made it a point to go to the employee room, not to fucking put away laundry or do anything helpful. He goes out of the way to get the towels there because that way he has a reason to get onto our side and start shit with us. So it's really fucking interesting that Mega Karen also chose that to be the location where she rummaged through. Not the bookcase full of towels that's just out in the open, but in the specific drawers that holds the temporary towels. She didn't even go through our other drawers. She didn't even try to look at stores on the other side. Literally nothing but those specific drawers, which again only holds our towels temporarily. And seeing as she doesn't work here or ever been inside of our employee room, I don't know how the fuck she knew where it was unless someone coached her through it. Also, she wants me to believe that her fucking bougie ass self, who needed to get specific towels that were only to be used on her, she's okay with towels that have been used on other clients because even if these were her towels, seeing as they're in our drawers, that means they were already used, washed, then folded away again. So why the fuck didn't she cause up an even bigger storm and talk about how dare we use her towels and now they're soiled and she has to get new ones? Instead, she settled so fucking easy. As long as she was able to grab it and as long as we gave them back to her, then she wouldn't cause any more problems. Surely someone who was so fucking particular about the towels they use and only having exclusive for them would not be satisfied with towels that have clearly been used on other people, especially on people's feet. And even if we're going to know that she all of a sudden lost the ability to distinguish between the color white and lime green, it's interesting that she chose these specific towels because, like I said earlier, they were from a bargain outlet. And I'm sorry, you want me to believe you, Mega Karen, the person who wouldn't be caught dead wearing anything that's not designer or custom made and tailored to yourself, went into a bargain outlet, which wasn't even anywhere near town because this specific one was 45 minutes away from our house and the only one of that kind in the area, found the exact same one that we bought, which was rarely if ever in stock, something that we know for a fucking fact because we came there frequently to know what it was and buy them out of it. And also know this is the only store that actually carries that because, like I said, we're not a well-off family, which means we have to be smart with our money, which means researching what we're buying. We looked online, we went to multiple shops that sold home goods all around our town and the neighboring towns, and this is the only shop that sold that specific brand and that specific type of towel. But you're telling me that you found that exact same shop, the exact same towel, and bought it when it was actually in stock. And as if that wasn't unlikely enough, there's also the fact that she came in 6 months after we owned the shop. 6 months after we already bought these towels, since again, that's one of the first fucking things we replaced. So, you're telling me that you, big brain mega fucking Karen, came in as a client, saw that we used these specific towels for our nail clients, found the exact same shop we went to, found those exact same towels, and was like, hey, I want unique towels just for me that won't get mixed up with anyone else, and I'm going to buy the exact same fucking towels that we already use for our nail clients. Make it make sense. I have no idea how my mom was able to stay so calm and composed, because she just gracefully said that we're sorry for the mix-up and we're willing to return the towels to her if she can prove that they're hers, since we still have all of our receipts, which would account for every single fucking towel in this place. She didn't really say it in those terms, but you get the gist. But that's when Mega Karen changed her tune real fucking quick and actually had the fucking nerve to say, oh, don't be angry. You know I love you both equally, and I'm sure there's all this misunderstanding. I don't want to start a fight. Bitch, you want to start a fight. You literally just accused us of being thieves while simultaneously trying to steal from us. For what? Because your problematic faith told you to do so? It's real fucking cute how she tried to say that, oh, Parasite had nothing to do with this. I decided to take matters into my own hand because I was so frustrated, but it's all just a little misunderstanding. First of all, bitch, we already fucking know that Parasite's behind all this because it's just too fucking suspicious. We're all fucking thinking it. We just didn't say anything, but the fact that you decided to say that unprovoked just goes to show that, yes, Parasite actually was the one who put you up to this. And the fact that you let this go so easily just goes to prove how much fucking bullshit your whole backstory of giving him a gift of white towels was. Because if we had actually stole from you, there's no way in fucking hell you would have just gone so easily. You would have fought us tooth and nail and probably be offended that we dare ask you for receipts. And the fact that she concocted this entire bullshit story, but still chose to adamantly accuse my mom out of anyone else of committing this fake-ass crime against her shows that consciously or unconsciously, this was a racially motivated incident, so let's discuss how I came with that conclusion by going over the most logical of things first. Motive. If something truly did happen and she wasn't trying to falsely accuse someone without proof, or to suit someone else's vendetta, or any personal prejudice she may have, then she'd have to use reasonable deduction skills to pick out the most logical suspect, which in our case would be Duncan, seeing as he's the only person who has issues with both Mega Karen and Parasite. He can't even stand to be in the shop when Karen is around, or else they dissolve into a verbal fighting match. He's been in and out of Parasite's employment for over a decade, so they have a very long and sordid history with issues going back and forth. He's not afraid to make his displeasure known or confront them about it, and apparently has a personality to do it, seeing as Parasite himself called Duncan hot-headed and impulsive. Not only that, but if he actually went ahead and did it, he'd probably be able to get away with it since he's not the owner and wouldn't have to even take responsibility for it. And on the flip side, what motive would we have? Yes, we have issues with Parasite, but stealing those towels would mean directly affecting Mega Karen for no fucking reason. Even with us making that stupid decision to purchase the exact same hair products as Parasite, that never actually affected the clients in any way, shape, or form. Seeing as, again, they could purchase the Parasite if they so wanted to because we didn't stop him from selling those products. We just stopped him from selling it in the main area. That's it. So why out of the blue we make a decision which would only affect Mega Karen, one of my mom's best paying clients, especially for fucking white towels, which we have no fucking need for, seeing as we already have an abundance of other towels, all following a color-coded system. And I forgot to mention earlier that we did actually have white towels, but they're only used for massage, facials, or waxes, all of which occurred infrequently, so we only had like a handful of towels, and those towels were very large because they were body towels, which is a very different size from what you're using with hair towels. So in either situation, we don't fucking need these towels. And unlike Parasite, who just lets his towels waste away, when we actually need something, we will purchase it if it's necessary. So if we actually needed fucking white towels for whatever reason, we would have gone out and buy it. We didn't have to resort to stealing, okay? Besides, if you want to use having issues with Parasite as a fucking motive, then you'd have to look at everyone in the shop because literally everyone had problems with Parasite. Even Granny at this point, because this is around the time that she found out about him siphoning her clients away from her. So we weren't the only ones who had issues with him. We also weren't the one with the longest history with him. But she didn't accuse anyone else or even say something like, I don't know who did it, but someone stole from me, or I don't even care who stole from me. Boss is the owner and therefore needs to take responsibility. No, she said she knows for a fact that Boss is the one who stole from her. In that case, she better have a solid fucking reason why she chose my mom over Duncan, seeing as we're now just throwing motive out of the window. So what makes my mom so fucking special that you chose her out of anyone else as the person who committed this crime? So maybe she's just one of those cunts who has issues with other women just because they're women, but that doesn't really work because most of our coworkers were female. If our salon had like 10 hairstylists and nail techs, then only 3 of them were male, all of which were the hairstylists, Parasite, Duncan, and Santa. So that's clearly not it. Perhaps she has an issue with women who are younger than her. But that also doesn't work because everyone else was younger than her except for Granny, with me being the youngest at like 18 at the time. So that doesn't exactly work. So the only thing that truly differentiates my mom from the rest of everyone else here is that she's a fucking minority. And an immigrant at that who doesn't speak English fluently, which I'm sure didn't play a part in your decision to target her at all. Because surely you wouldn't specifically go after someone you thought wouldn't be able to defend themselves because they didn't understand the situation. And you most certainly wouldn't think my mom's too stupid to realize when someone's trying to steal from her just because her English is conversational rather than fluent. Which also means you realize that she always understood it when you thought you were being slick, mocking her and making degrading jokes with Parasite to her face. And it wasn't that she couldn't understand y'all, she just didn't call y'all on it because unfortunately you're not the first ignorant fuckface she's encountered who thinks it's superior to someone else just because you speak English fluently. Seemingly forgetting that her not being fluent in English means she speaks a whole nother language and is conversational in another. Which is a hell lot more than you who only speaks one, but then again English is the standard and therefore anyone who doesn't speak it fluently is a fucking dumbass, right? But sure, it's just a coincidence that my mom was the one you accused of fucking stealing from you. Just as you being a client to Parasite of all people and willingly listen to him repeatedly mock our very existence and throw out baseless racial accusations about our character had no influence on your decision to enter this farce. And it totally doesn't show your fucking bias that you blindly believe this man without ever asking our side, especially seeing as you're not like his other clients. She didn't have a prior established relationship with either of them and became a client of both of them at the same exact time. Which meant she had direct access to my mom and could have asked for her side of the story at any point in time. Not that it's any of her fucking business, but since she wants to get involved so bad and supposedly loves both of them equally and all that fucking bullshit, she should have been a neutral third party and hear both sides before coming to a conclusion, but she didn't respect us enough to even give us that fucking courtesy. Not that any of this long-winded explanation matters anyways, because the sole fact that she inserted herself into the situation is enough to show her racial prejudice. At that point, she should have been a client for a year and had heard all about Parasite's issues with the other stylists and technicians in the shop, which I know she heard because she was there before he got into the room, so I heard the exact same fucking shit as her. But despite Parasite having decade-long problems with some of them, she never thought to put herself into the fights between Parasite and Santo, or Parasite and Tina, or Parasite and freaking Granny when this was happening, and they all coincidentally happened to be the same race. It's only when he had an issue with us, the ones that are different, the fucking Asians, the fucking minorities, that's when she felt necessary to include herself into the situation and then accuse us of stealing. So yeah, it's pretty clear to me she already had preconceived notions about us, which is why she so readily believed his racially charged claims without question, and why it was no biggie for her to lie and throw thief onto the ever-growing list of claims, whether he asked her to do it or she thought of this fucking scheme herself. And her preconceived notions were only further perpetuated by Parasite's jokes, which, funnily enough, was only ever targeted towards Asian people, and baseless gossip, which was all brushed off as harmless because it didn't affect them in the slightest, but cost us our livelihood. Like I said earlier, we were building up our clientele basically from the ground up since this cheapskate didn't put a single penny into the nail business, so the hair side of the salon was doing well enough for him. But our technicians only had so many loyal clients who stayed with them from the beginning, and the others were only coming back once the quality of the supplies and services improved. We had to completely rebrand and show that our salon didn't service subpar nails anymore, which is a feat in and of itself, made all the more difficult when we're being targeted by one of the most influential members of the community. And seeing as this is a small town, the best advertisement is through word of mouth, so when someone with a bit of status starts talking shit about my family and how we're scammers who steal and don't do things by the book, people aren't going to exactly want to conduct business with us. Of course, there are those who don't know Parasite or care for his opinions, but those are diamonds in the rough, and more often than not deterred by his theatrics and frequent temper tantrums, which occurred multiple times a day, sometimes with the same fucking client. And it doesn't matter who's right or what type of quality we can provide. Most people don't want to stick around to hear someone tirade and bitch nonstop when they signed up for a relaxing pedicure. And those that do thrive on drama and naturally gravitate to the center of it, the one who causes the uproar and can give them their fucking entertainment for the week, not the ones that suffer because of it, nor do they care about the collateral. Aside from all his shenanigans, Parasite was also directly sabotaging our business by trying to take clients out from under us. But because they're not affected by it and refuse to see that we are, his clients can continue believing that they're good people with just a edgy sense of humor, and justify or minimize the damage that has been done, and all for fucking what? Because they like the guy and think he's entertaining, or they like how he does their fucking hair? I don't even remember how the situation ended because honestly it's all a rage-inducing blur, but I know for a fucking fact that neither of them apologized or acknowledged that they did anything wrong. Mega Karen just stopped coming to my mom and having her nails done at all because the style she wants takes a skilled and talented technician, and seeing as we're in a small retirement town, not too many people want to get that type of style, so most technicians never had the chance to practice it. So she'd come in for Parasite, breeze past us with a short greeting, and never having the fucking balls to look us in the eyes, which, yeah bitch, you should be ashamed of your fucking behavior. But despite that, she still continued to insist that it was all just a misunderstanding, but funnily enough never brought up the damn white towels again, and Parasite never used anything even remotely similar to a white towel. I don't even remember who did his laundry, probably Granny, but I hope to God that we were not the ones who picked it up because, ugh. But afterwards, the tensions were even higher, and rather than just ignoring it until the lease is over, my uncle decided to fan the fucking flames by getting into more screaming matches, despite us repeatedly asking him to just stop coming to the shop since it's unnecessary. Like I said earlier, my uncle was the one who handled the legal side of the business, but he also did a bit of maintenance. So other than occasional fixes, he can do most of his work at home. Or at the very least wait until Parasite left, seeing as he's always gone before 6 p.m. Or just do it on Sunday when the shop is closed. But of course, he's a man, so he doesn't think it's necessary to listen to us women and continue on, even getting pettier and doing stupid shit like turning off the AC on Parasite's side, or denying his clients complimentary snacks and drinks, which we were always the one who had to profusely apologize for, then get into arguments with him because for whatever fucking reason, he couldn't seem to understand that you can't just take out your frustrations with Parasite out on his clients, even if they side with him. They don't deserve that type of treatment. It's unprofessional as fuck, and it doesn't exactly endear them to us. In fact, it just further validates their distaste for us and Parasite's claims. But worst of all, he once actually threw a chair in the middle of an argument. And thank fuck no one got hurt, especially the client, and we didn't get fucking sued out of our ass, which my mom would have had to pay for, seeing as she's the actual owner and the one held liable. And despite the fact that he was obviously in the wrong here, and there was nothing that could have justified his actions, he refused to admit his fault or take any fucking responsibility, and instead tried to justify it by saying he couldn't control his anger in the moment and he had every right to be angry at Parasite, so we basically need to stop being nagging bitches. First of all, I don't give a flying fuck how angry Parasite made you or what he did. You never throw things in a fit of rage, especially not with intent to hurt someone, and when there's a client, no less. You need to learn how to manage that shit or stay the fuck home. Secondly, you're not the only one who's pissed. In fact, we have every reason to be even more pissed than you, seeing as we're the ones actually dealing with him on a daily basis. But you don't see us going around throwing things because we're not goddamn toddlers. So good for you that you can speak your mind, storm off in righteous anger, but us nagging bitches are the ones that actually have to clean up their fucking mess after your grand exit. Thirdly, we wouldn't even be in this mess if he actually listened for once rather than his man ego fortify his belief that he always knows best. We didn't trust Parasite from the beginning, suggested he get everything in writing, and told him to stay home since he can't control his damn temper, but he didn't listen, so now we're in this fucking mess, and rather than doing the bare minimum and just admitting he fucked up, he dug his heels in and blames us for nagging him. I'm not gonna even lie, I was so tempted to fall into the hate all men because they're garbage train, because any good male influence I actually had in my life were not physically in my life, and those in my close vicinity were fucking shit. At work, I had to deal with a racist asshole whose life mission is to make ours a living hell, as well as disgusting men in their 80s who would unprovoked tell me all about their Vietnamese conquest while serving in the Vietnam War, half of which may or may not be consensual, which I don't even want to fucking get into that. But then they tell me how much they like my touch on their skin and proceed to ask me, a 17-year-old girl at the time, if I'd give them a happy end massage, some of them even laughing as they asked me if I even knew what that fucking meant. They were easily 4 times my age, repeatedly told me how young I looked, and presumed that I was 15, with one especially nasty motherfucker telling me he's surprised I was older than 13, but he still wanted to fuck me. So yeah, fun times. But I can't even escape the bullshit once I get home because my uncle acted like a fucking man-child and refused to see his wrongdoings and instead throw temper tantrums and petulantly refused to do any work, since calling him out on his bullshit wasn't holding him accountable for his actions, but rather stating that we knew how to do things better so he shouldn't even bother. It was really fucking tempting to fall into that mindset, but I don't like generalizations about people's characters, and I hate when it's done to me, so I do my best not to. Even though, no lie, I struggle with it sometimes. Okay, a lot of times, but the important thing is I try my best. Now, of course, that's not the only bullshit I had to deal with because life isn't kind enough to only give you one hardship to handle at a time. During the beginning, I was trying to finish up my senior year of high school, but multiple cancels had fucked up my schedule time and time again. And basically, I had to take extra online classes, which was only supposed to be for 1 semester, but they fucked up again, and it turned into the entire year, all while I was simultaneously taking the normal amount of classes as every other senior. The catch was, my house actually had no internet, and despite requesting for a study hall period from the very beginning of the year, my request was denied because I was a top student and those spots were reserved for students who failed economics, which actually turned out to be a fucking bullshit reason because I had 2 newcomers to TV production at different times in the year, and they both got study hall without asking, one even getting 2 study hall periods, and they did nothing but watch movies. But they couldn't leave well alone as it is, but instead constantly interrupting me on my lunch break to ask me about my progress and if I thought to use the allocated hour of lunchtime to get schoolwork done. Which, Gee, no, I didn't think of that until you called me in for the 5th time this fucking month to tell me to do what I've been doing since the beginning of the fucking year. You know, not eating lunch at all to do schoolwork, finishing up my regular classwork as quickly as possible to get permission to head to the library to work on it some more. But sure, thanks for the suggestion. I'll think over it as I sit and wait in the long-ass line for the next computer to open up, since we're a tiny school with only 10 computers, which is why I rush to get there in the first place and don't leave until the bell rings for the next class. But it's fine, they keep calling me up to your office to ask me the same exact fucking question time and time again. Aside from that, this was actually the first time I was fully working at a job because I had previously only helped out as a receptionist or barista at my family's establishments over the summer or as needed, but now I'm spending all my time there, which means having to see how often people mistreat my immigrant mom purely because she doesn't speak English fluently and she's non-confrontational. And it just made me want to provide a better life for her all that much more, but I was unsure of what occupation or even what college to go to, and I didn't want to squander the opportunity that she worked so hard to give me. I had only applied to a community college nearby as well as a pretty well-known university a couple hours away, and I ended up getting accepted into both, but I'll be honest, I didn't really feel strongly towards either of them, so it didn't really take all that much convincing from my mom for me to attend the one nearby. And I think all of that honestly had to do with the guilt I felt for not being able to do much of anything for her about Parasite, or really anyone else. I mean, I'm angry and able to rant about it now, kinda sorta. I couldn't back then, and they actually tried to hide as much of it as they could from me because I was so young, so that really just magnified my guilt even more. On top of all of that, I had recently just cut out 2 people from my life who didn't exactly treat me well, which must have triggered something in my mind because I was suddenly bombarded with repressed childhood memories and struggling to make sense and deal with all the trauma. But worst of all, one of my cousins around my age passed unexpectedly, and I couldn't go to their funeral because money was tight at the time, and we also didn't have anyone to look after the shop. So yeah, this was the time when my uncle and Parasite started really fighting, and we couldn't trust him to look after the shop on his own, nor could we do with being down 2 technicians for the duration of the trip, and that was really rough. This was honestly one of the most awful and stressful times in my life, second only to the ongoing shit show we're currently living through, and I guess all the pent-up frustrations building up the past year or so really reminded me of feeling so trapped, isolated, helpless, and angry when no one would listen to our plight. And I'm not talking about family or friends because they were there for emotional support, but they were all very far away and couldn't do much to help in the moment. And the people that could, people like our coworkers and clients, were content with being the bystanders and passively watching as the situation unfolded, or, like Mega Karen, actively participated in Parasite's attack. And while it's no one else's job to advocate for us, just showing us support when we confront a parasite or call him out on it would have made things so much better, or at the very least tolerable. Because unfortunately, people don't always change when their victim stands up for themselves, and change usually only occurs when someone from the in-group stands up with them in solidarity. Most notably, when our coworkers eventually got fed up with his non-stop complaint with the music, Parasite modified his behaviors, and while he didn't fully stop complaining, it lessened considerably. So I'm not asking for them to put themselves out there on the line and be our hero or anything, but just adding their voice and support would have been nice. Instead, they condoned his action with their inaction in silence, or worse, made sad attempts at excuses to shield him. After a huge blowout event, quite a few of the stylists and technicians would actually approach us to express their commiseration and talk about how wrong and awful it was for Parasite to treat us as such, but in the next moment, downplay his actions and try to convince us that he's not that bad once you get to know him. Granny in particular was guilty of this, most often starting by sympathizing with her situation, stating that we didn't deserve to be treated thusly, and she's never seen him act like that because he's usually a really good guy who treats his friends super well. But he's kind of just an asshole when it comes to business, which first of all, I don't really fucking care what he's like outside of work because this is the only environment in which we interact with him. And you can't just dismiss his behavior as he's different at work. Second of all, him having a reputation for being a jackass when it comes to the people he does business and work with doesn't justify his actions at all. And third of all, treating the people who love and support you well doesn't make you a good person. It means you meet the bare fucking requirements of being a decent human being. What's more telling is how you treat people that don't benefit you or who you deem as beneath you, people like waiters or co-workers, or hell, even clients whom Parasite talks shit about despite them literally being the ones that pay his fucking bills. And speaking of money, are we just going to forget the fact that he tried to take clients out from under a friend, not even because of any personal issues they were having at the time, but because he was having problems with us and she happened to work for us. And keep in mind that she didn't just start working there out of the blue. She had been working there the whole time and continued doing so when the shop had an owner change. A change which was entirely his decision, but once he decided he didn't like that anymore, he lashed out, decided to take us down with her as collateral. So if treating a friend well means backstabbing them and impacting their revenue just because you're angry with someone else, I don't even want to fucking know what you think treating a friend poorly means. Because damn, with friends like that, who fucking needs enemies? Even though I understand that her loyalty will always be with Parasite because she's been friends with him for over a decade, despite her growing fond of us, still beyond frustrating because she knew how fucking wrong it was to the point that she felt it necessary to apologize on his behalf, and yet she still wouldn't entertain the thought that maybe, just possibly, he could, potentially, be racist against Asians. Even though she herself said that she's never seen him act that way in the decade that she's known him and worked for him, despite the many people who've gone in and out of his employment, all of whom had issues with him, he's never treated them so badly or escalate things so quickly or even to that fucking extent. And yet somehow, in the short few months we first got to know each other, we offended him deeper than a decade's worth of animosity he had with some people. So pray tell, what about us is so fucking atrocious it pushed a man beyond his limits and forced him to act in such a manner? Because obviously it had to be something that we said or did. Because it couldn't possibly be that he's the fucking problem here, despite the fact that literally everyone who's ever worked with him having issues with him. So it's just a coincidence that we're the first Asian family he's worked with and he treats us like this. It's just a coincidence that we're the only foreigners who's told to go back to their fucking country, even though we have people like Todd, who was French, or Granny, who was Italian, and he never said that to them when they caused him anger. It's just a coincidence that he only ever tells racist jokes about Asians. It's just a coincidence that his accusations were based on prevalent racial stereotypes against Asians. It's just a coincidence that one of his clients accused us of stealing towels he coveted and wanted for his own. How many fucking coincidences need to occur before red flags start appearing and it crosses your mind that perhaps Parasite could possibly just be a little bit racist? Like, damn, I'm not asking you to announce it to the fucking world or blast him or even label him as a fucking racist, just to entertain the fucking notion. And yet for some reason, you won't cross that line and adamantly refuse to see otherwise, insisting that he's only an asshole but not a racist. Even though those two things are not mutually exclusive, because you can be a racist, you can be an asshole, you can be a racist asshole. It's really not that difficult of a concept. But you know him, and he's a nice guy who's not racist towards Asians, and in fact, you don't even think he's capable of being racist at all. Which, cute, you don't think so, and yet I experienced it. Also, who the fuck are you to tell me that he's not racist towards Asians? You're not Asian, you don't have family and friends who are Asians, and the only Asians you know and interact with on a daily basis is us, who are telling you that, hey, maybe, possibly, he's a bit of fucking racist. Like, seriously, it just feels so fucking ass backwards that we have to make our case as to why his actions actually qualify as racist to people who already made up their fucking minds and entered the conversation ready to defend their problematic faith. If we're somehow miraculously able to achieve that fucking feat without being diminished or ignored, then we have to quantify the severity of his actions and if it actually warrants any consequences. But of course, before we can discuss that, we have to take 100 steps back and really look at the situation as a whole, because perhaps we just judge too quickly, and besides, we don't really know both sides of the story. Any other time, and I completely agree with that sentiment, but I don't want to fucking hear that bullshit since these same fucking people never thought to give us the same benefit of the doubt or hear our side of the situation, and instead fully dived in and already chose to defend Parasite. Until the topic of racism is brought up, then they want to take their sweet ass time dissecting motivations because maybe he just didn't know any better and they're all honest mistakes which he made 100 times over, but it's all an accident and not a choice he actively made while knowing it's wrong. Because it's not like we've asked him repeatedly to stop doing it and express how uncomfortable it makes us, but then again that's probably our fault because we weren't being clear enough or vocal enough or explained it enough times for him to understand, or perhaps we didn't approach it with the right tone, or we were too angry and emotional so therefore nothing we said had merit, or perhaps on the flip side we were too calm and dispassionate, which consequently rendered him incapable of taking us seriously. He's therefore not responsible for any of his actions afterwards because his alleged ignorance negates accountability for any harm his repeated actions have caused. Which means the lack of change in his behavior does not reflect on him, but rather our inability to incite such change through our explanations. Because obviously the burden of obligation falls on us for not taking enough precautions to prevent him from being racist to us. And as if diminishing or invalidating our experience isn't enough, they have to go a step further in shoving the knife deeper by putting the onus on us to concern ourselves about the potential ramifications it would have on the racist if he was exposed. Because her cousin's friend's boyfriend knew someone who was falsely accused of racism and it effectively ruined their life. So we need to think long and hard before slapping that label on Parasite and think about how it'll affect Parasite once he's exposed. Granted, that's assuming that people actually believe us rather than seeing us as another minority trying to use our race card to ruin an innocent old man. Because obviously, potentially being labeled as a racist in a conservative retirement town would have devastating consequences, more so than actually being the target of a racist. Especially seeing as when I checked, the Asian population of our town was literally 1%. So out of 2,000 people, that's 20 people, 4 of whom were my family alone. And need I remind you that we had no fucking family or friends in this town, whereas most of Parasite's social circle resided there. But I'm sure it would have been so much more awful for him, because it's not like at this point we've been given any indication that people here are biased towards believing one person while blatantly ignoring the other, to the point that they actually start a conversation with us just to defend his actions despite admitting how wrong it was. But of course it would have completely tarnished his reputation and destroyed his career and tainted the way people see him, which is pretty damn fucking funny since we never once even said anything about blasting this man anywhere or exposing him. We didn't post anything to Facebook or go to the local news stations. Hell, we never even fucking gossiped about him to the clients, which is something he did all the fucking time. We didn't ask for reparations or for people to boycott his business or for him to be lambasted by the general public. All we've ever asked of this man is to stop making racial jokes about us, which make us uncomfortable, and to stop bringing shop business and his personal grievances to the clients. I mean, if he's gonna gossip to his friends and family, I don't really fucking care, because at least then it's only a certain amount of the town that hates us. But he does it with all the clients, and not just his either, since he causes a fucking scene everywhere he goes and makes it known to everyone in the shop what he thinks of us and whatever he alleged we did that fucking day. And on top of all this, the only fucking reason we're even having this conversation in the first place is because people like Granny are the ones that brought it up. We didn't approach him going off about how fucking shit Parasite was, so naturally they defend their friend while condemning his actions. No, they approached us with their sympathies, then go on to defend this man, and when we disagree and suggest that, hey, maybe he's kind of racist, it gets turned into us unjustly trying to cancel him. Though technically canceling wasn't really a term that was used back then, but you get the point. Like seriously, in what other fucking situation is it expected for you not only to discuss what the other person did wrong to you, but not show any negative emotion towards them, hold their fucking hand and lead them on the path of being a better person, be okay and ready to forgive them for all the harm they've done and will do on said path, all while they're still doing harm to you when they haven't apologized or even acknowledged any role they played? And if you don't, you're in the wrong because you're a bitter and hateful person, so why the fuck should they even bother trying to change if you're not willing to forgive them? It's frustrating beyond words that they can see and admit what he's doing is wrong, yet they can't even fucking entertain the notion that there are racial undertones to this entire situation. Because the moment we even hint at it, they're immediately defensive and dismissive. It's not like we were being aggressively accusing back then, because you're taught from an early age to cautiously approach the topic of race in fear of offending the other party. I mean, now I'm not exactly afraid to say it as it is and call them a fucking racist because it's been years and I'm tired of tiptoeing around their sensibilities and coddling them. But at the time, we'd only say things like, you know, this or that makes me very uncomfortable, this is why. But we never even brought up the word racist, and definitely nothing that would indicate we think the speaker is complicit in all this, and yet they seem to take it as such and dance around the fucking topic, either saying it's not that serious or not everything has to be about race, which pisses me the fuck off, especially coming from these people, because from the fucking moment we met, they always had to find a way to comment about my race in some way or the other, when I'm just here existing. Literally the first fucking words out of their mouth is to ask, what are you, or where are you from? Some of them not even have the fucking decency to give the pretense of small talk. They don't even introduce themselves or ask my name or talk about the weather. Sometimes not even a hi or a hello, just straight up, what are you? As if that's an acceptable way to greet a stranger. Because we certainly don't know each other, and this isn't something that came up in conversation while you were getting to know each other. We're meeting for the first fucking time, and that's what you fucking asked me. And then they have the audacity to get irritated when their vague ass questions get vague answers. I mean, if you're gonna ask me, what are you? I can answer with a variety of questions. I'm a human, I'm a person, I'm a woman, I'm a daughter, a student. And if you ask where I'm from, I'll tell you the town or state that I was born in, which, what do you know, happens to be the United States of America, seeing as I'm an Asian American. But of course, that's not what they actually want to know, so they get all huffy and ask, where are you really from? And when I insist that, no, really, I was born in America, like, do you need to see my fucking birth certificate or some shit? They then go ahead and ask where my parents are from. And luckily for them, I'm a first generation, so they got the answer relatively quick. But what about my family members who are second generation? And what people who are third or fourth generation? Are you going to go ahead and ask where their grandparents are from? Where your great-great-grandparents from? Where your great-great-great-great-grandparents from? Like, seriously, how far back are you going to fucking go? Then again, some people don't even ask and just go straight for the, you know what I mean. Which, yes, unfortunately I do, because people like you love asking me that question wherever I go. And at this point, I've been asked that question like hundreds, if not 1,000 times. And that's not a fucking exaggeration, because I've moved so fucking often. And I've been asked that by countless students, teachers, faculties, and most importantly, strangers at the mall or grocery, or really anywhere I go, which is super fun when I'm just trying to mind my own fucking business. And for some reason, people need to know so damn bad that they'll interrupt whatever I'm doing. And if I decide not to answer, I get called a bitch or followed around until I answer. So, you know. Fun times, especially since saying that they asked is being generous, since half of the time it's more like people just throwing out their guesses to me. They just approach out of the blue and go, you're Chinese, right? Oh wait, no, you're Japanese. No wait, I know, you're Korean. The last one being added in recent years because of the rise in K-pop. So improvement, I guess. I'm glad at least they've outgrown the whole treating me like a show pony phase, where they try to touch my mane, get me to do tricks, but, they for some reason still feel the need to guess my breed. And I really just can't wrap my head around the fucking need to know, because what does that insignificant piece of information about a stranger do for your life? Is it just because you want to brag that you saw an agent out in the wild and you could identify what breed they were? Not that they ever actually get it right, but the ones that make me laugh the fucking most are the ones that want to act like they were gonna guess Vietnamese next, or they just knew it but didn't say it when I tell them that I'm Vietnamese. Like, shut the fuck up, no you weren't. And honestly, if you want to know so fucking bad, why not just directly ask me what my ethnicity is, instead of asking roundabout general questions, which in turn give you general answers which you weren't even looking for? Like, honestly, it's a little embarrassing that a foreigner like me has to be teaching you, a native, how to speak your own damn language properly. Especially seeing as I always end up getting a comment afterwards on how well I speak English for an Asian. Again, why the fuck do you need to connect everything back to my race? And because of your dumb line of questions, you just learned that I was born and raised in America, and seeing as American schools mainly teach English, yeah, no shit, Sherlock, I'm fluent in English. Anyways, this happened pretty frequently at the salon as well, with Parasite of course doing the exact same thing, but also making unnecessary comments on our music and food. I mean, it's fine to have your preferences, and if you really feel that inclined to say it out loud, okay, go ahead. But why does he have to make a comment every single time the little 5 Asian songs come on, and yet he was quiet about all the French and Spanish songs? Why did he have to act so surprised when he found out that yes, we know how to use other eating utensils, because no, we don't fucking eat soup with chopsticks? Why do you always have to make a fucking spectacle about how exotic our food is when sometimes it's literally just rice, scrambled eggs, and cucumber slices? So much so that he couldn't even stand eating in the same room as us or go into that same room until hours after we eat. When almost everything we brought for lunch was quick, simple meals like cơm chiên, canh bí, rau muống và cá chiên, gỏi cuốn, bánh mì thịt, bánh xèo, foods which barely have a scent, especially seeing as we never even fucking use a microwave, just to be extra careful about not offending your sensibilities. But that was still enough for you to avoid the break room at all costs for hours after we finished eating. Seriously, he acted like we were rude fucks who on the regular brought in our most pungent exotic foods, but we wouldn't even do that when working in a Vietnamese salon, let alone American one. And he claims it's because he doesn't do well with strong odors, and yet, interestingly enough, only had an issue with our Asian food. He never once had an issue with coworkers microwaving popcorn or meatloaf, or bringing in fried chicken or pizza or pies, or even Granny bringing in some of her Italian dishes. For fuck's sake, he didn't even have an issue when he or anyone else got Chinese takeout from the Chinese buffet, which happened often because it's right next door. And I checked too because I remember it being 2 doors down, but it's literally next door to the salon. He doesn't see the fucking irony in the fact that he's okay with bastardized, Americanized Asian foods, but he's not okay with authentic Asian food. I mean, all the other food people bring in have strong smells as well, but I suppose it's pleasant enough since it's part of the general American palate. But our Asian food isn't, so that's why he's only sensitive to our food, and all of it at that. Because I could understand if it's every once in a while when we bring in a certain food which he just couldn't stand the smell of, and we would accommodate that. But it's literally every single fucking time. And again, you're telling me that rice and scrambled eggs is enough for you to be like, oh, that's too strong. I'm getting a headache. I can't be in the same room with you for fucking hours. Okay, bitch. Plus, there's this incessant need to talk to my mom in an Asian accent as a joke, as well as attributing any accomplishments of mine, such as getting accepted into a semi-prestigious university, as only due to the fact that I'm Asian. Like, I'm sorry, did you somehow get a hold of my academic transcripts, reference letters, and application letters? Did you also have a copy of every other person's who applied, and therefore you can say without a doubt that I was only accepted on the basis of my race, and what, like, wrongfully took a place of a more deserving kid? Or are you trying to say that me being Asian means there's some special sauce in my genes which gives me an unfair advantage? Like, honestly, we just can't win with people like him. Because if you're like my mom and you work hard, save your money for 2 decades to purchase a shop to run with your family, it's not okay. Because obviously being an immigrant means she came by that money through unscrupulous means and therefore runs her business through dishonest means. But if you're like me and try to further education, get a degree, and work a corporate job, then you're also wrong because you're taking a deserving person's place, because obviously minorities have to be given handouts or cheat and steal from honest working people like him, because only true red-blooded Americans have the work ethic to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and make better lives for themselves. I mean, if those were one-off occurrences or every once in a while, then I would agree that I'm probably reaching and looking to things too much. But all of these together doesn't exactly paint a pretty picture, especially when they happen so fucking frequently and repeatedly. So it's infuriating as hell for anyone to then insinuate that I'm the one that's race obsessed for pointing that shit out, when again, the first fucking thing out of their mouth to me is to ask what I am. And then for the rest of the time they know me, feel it necessary to link everything that I am to my fucking race, when again, I'm just here existing. It's so fucking frustrating to not be believed or even given the benefit of the doubt when the people I'm having these conversations with are the ones who again approach me to begin with, and they also experience all of this in real time with me. So it's why I'm not exactly surprised when nowadays popular YouTubers are called out for their problematic behaviors, but you have people who adamantly refuse to believe it, even when presented with evidence. I mean, it's not like I show my coworkers old posts or videos of years gone past and he's had ample time to grow and change. For fuck's sakes, the man hasn't even so much as acknowledged his part in any of it, or that anything he's done is wrong, let alone apologize or change his behavior. They witnessed it in real time, can explain that they sympathize, but at the end of the day, still refuse to admit that he's racist, not even hold him responsible, but literally just couldn't even label him as a racist, and instead diminish our experience and cling onto the illusion that he's a good person. And I just want to remind you that he was a hairstylist in a small town of 2,000 people, and that's the level of influence he had. So can you imagine what it's like for YouTubers with literally millions of devoted followers? I have to admit though, I'm working on not letting this experience affect how I perceive my judgment skills, because so far I've been pretty spot on with my assessment of which YouTubers give me a weird vibe, but that's probably just been luck, and I don't exactly want to start assuming that I could just tell who's a good person because of a quick impression. But anyways, I've rambled on far too long at this point, so let's actually wrap up the story so I can close this chapter of my life. Now, as much as I wish it all ended with a satisfying revenge of epic proportions and he finally got his due, this isn't exactly an origin story of some heroine or villainess, I guess, in their perspective. So things ended pretty anticlimactically. Because you don't exactly forget a lifetime of conditioning to be agreeable and non-confrontational, just because you encounter one asshole who treats you a little worse than everyone else. A couple months after Mega Karen's attack, I eventually overheard him talking about opening up a new shop, which I guess he was planning to catch us off guard and leave us in dire straits by taking his clients elsewhere and becoming a rival salon. And maybe would have had the desired effect if he was actually able to keep on the down low, but he could never keep his mouth fucking shut, so we got the heads up like a month or so before he actually took action. Since it had only been 2 years at this point, he had definitely broken the contract, so we could have sued him, but whether it was due to insufficient funds or having an incompetent lawyer who may or may not have been in cahoots with Parasite, or we just didn't want to have to deal with the damn headache he'd caused, since he'd 1,000% drag it out as long as he could, which probably would have been a pretty long time since this man has the time, desire, and money to fuck us over with. But we didn't go forward with it and just let him leave without comment. And as much as it sucked seeing him get off scot-free and thrive, I can't even describe how much relief we felt once he finally left. It's actually crazy how toxic and stressful an environment can feel just because of one person's presence. There were countless times where we just sit in the car before opening the shop for the day and we couldn't even say a word to each other. We just sit there in silence, dreading going in, even though Parasite wouldn't even show up for another hour or two. And once we actually did get inside, all of our coworkers would just joke about what's gonna be today, what's the fucking scandal, what's he gonna cause shit about. But no one ever laughed because we all knew it was going to be something every single day. Whether it's the towels, the music, the AC, or whatever the fuck he wants to complain about today, it's going to be something. But even after he left, we didn't stay that long. We ended up selling the shop in the next couple months and left town because even without him looming over us, it still felt extremely hostile. And every time we stepped out of our house, it felt like we were on enemy territory. Which I know probably sounds pretty damn fucking dramatic, but let's just play a little thought experiment here, okay? If Parasite was only able to garner 10 loyal clients each year, over a decade that equals 100 clients. And if you only had one new client for the salon as a whole, every day for, let's just say, a year, because that's when things really start getting rough, that equals 365 clients. And altogether, that 465 out of 2,000 people means that's roughly 23% of the town population who've directly heard him lambasting my family and accusing us of either stealing from him, conducting business in illegal ways, and whatever fucking else. And keep in mind, that's not including the people who heard about the gossip down the line, like his family and friends or the friends of his clients. Seeing as this is a small town, most of our clients actually live in the same neighborhood, and what street you lived on and how close they are to you is actually one of the first things people talked about when being a client. And not only that, but most of Parasite's main clients were people who worked in the post office, grocery stores, gas stations. Just everywhere we went, we saw someone who we knew were his clients. So it's an extremely isolating experience having no family or friends nearby and knowing that most people you come in contact with on the daily know about you from someone else's account, but they don't know you and don't care enough to actually get to know your side of the story. And the fact that the only people who do sympathize with you and agree that it's wrong are the same ones who will try and convince you that it's not that bad because he's actually a really good person. And I'm not gonna lie, it starts to make you feel like you're going fucking insane and you just start questioning your fucking reality because I knew that deep down this is all really fucked up. But when the only people who see that is your own family and everyone around you keeps insisting that he's amazing, he's the best person ever, it becomes a real mindfuck. And all I can really say is that I'm glad we no longer live there, especially during these times. And originally, I wanted to take this time to just discuss the rise in Asian hate crimes as well as the general animosity towards Asians. I've been editing as I recorded each section, and this is going to be at least like a 2-hour long video, and I don't want to just tack on a short like 5-minute segment at the end of this. And honestly, talking about this entire event was a lot more emotionally draining and mentally taxing than I thought it would be, so I'm not exactly in the right headspace to be discussing the atrocities that occurred towards Asians during this pandemic, because most of them targeted the elderly and women, especially with the recent Atlanta shooting, which targeted 3 Asian smalls, left 8 dead, 6 of which were Asian women. That one was really rough and a little too close to home, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave like links down to other videos and websites which discuss this in further detail in case you want to learn more. But yeah, I think we'll just go ahead and like lay down or something. All that being said, if you actually watch all the way through, which I can only think of really one person who would, and if you're that person, thank you so much for always being there for me, and I love you. But yeah, I've been me, aka me is me, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye!